Chapter 540 Guests at the Yu Family. Good night, Meishio, Yuan said to her as he got comfortable underneath the blankets. Good night, Meishio responded in a somewhat nervous voice, trying her best to not think too much about their situation. Nothing will happen, Yuan. He's not someone who would do such a thing unless I initiate it. She eventually convinced herself that nothing will happen and slowly fell asleep. They wake up the following morning without any incidents, and they return to the Silver Restaurant for breakfast. Good morning, young lads. What do you think of yesterday's food? Was it to your liking? Chef San asked them the moment they entered the restaurant. Yes, it was amazing and thank you for giving us so much food, Yuan said to him. Chef San laughed out loud and said, If I didn't cook so much food, you'd starve the entire night, young man. Yuan was surprised to hear this and wondered why he would say such a thing. I can tell just by looking at your body that you require a lot of energy, so I purposefully made more food for you. You eat a lot, right? I guess. Yuan said, completely dumbfounded now. How does one tell how much someone can eat just by looking at their body? Is Chef San using a cultivation technique? Thank you for the food. Sometime later, Yuan and Meishio left the restaurant and returned back to the Immortal Caves to eat their breakfast that tasted as amazing as last night's dinner. After breakfast, they spent a few hours cultivating, as the spiritual energy in their area was too good to not cultivate. Once their bodies were filled with energy, Yuan and Meishio made their way to the training tower, where they would proceed to spend the rest of the day training. I will see you later. If you need anything, you can find me on the 4th floor. If I am not there, I am at the outdoor training area, Meishio said to Yuan before separating from him. There's an outdoor training area? Yuan asked, as this was his first time hearing about it. Yes, you follow this path behind the building, and it will lead you to a large outdoor training area. Alright, I will check it out when I have the time. Yuan nodded. A few minutes later, Meishio arrived at the 4th floor and was immediately welcomed by the instructor. At the same time, Yuan was approached by Wang Ming the moment he noticed Yuan entering the gymnasium. Hey Yuan. How about another round? Wang Ming asked with a bright smile on his face. Sure. Yuan calmly nodded, and they went to look for a spacious area to spar again, which quickly attracted the attention of other disciples in the gymnasium. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of miles away back in their hometown, the Yu family sat before two individuals with a seemingly nervous expression on their faces, which was very unnatural and rare. In fact, they weren't this nervous even when dealing with Chairman Zhao. One of these two individuals was sitting on the couch, and she was a graceful young lady who appeared to be around 18 years old, wearing a luxurious red dress adorned with gems. The second guest was an old man wearing a butler suit, and he was standing behind the young lady, clearly her caretaker. What brings you to our humble Yu family, esteemed guests? Yong asked them. The young lady calmly sipped on the tea that had been provided by the Yu family before quickly putting it down. Whoever made this tea should learn how to make tea, she said. Yu Yong and Tang Li's eyebrows uncontrollably twitched when they heard her words, but they didn't get angry. Yu Yong even put on a forced smile on his face before speaking. I apologize for the inconvenience, Lady Chu, and I will make sure whoever made this tea will be removed for their incompetence. The young lady didn't say anything else for a good minute before she looked around and asked, If I recall correctly, you should have a daughter and a son. Where are they? Although he was taken aback by such a random question, Yu Yong responded, They are currently busy and away from the family. Is that so? The young lady remained calm, acting like she didn't care about his answer. Then where did they go? Our daughter Yu Ro is currently in another city after joining a faction, Yu Yong said, purposefully ignoring Yuan. The young lady then said, Just your daughter? What about your son Yu Tian? Both Yu Yong and Tang Li had a bad feeling about this young lady when the name Yu Tian came out of her mouth. She's also in another city being looked at by the doctors there, Yu Yong said. Although he could have told her that Yu Tian had left the family, he was afraid that she might ask more questions, so he gave her something less questionable. I see. Do you mind telling me which city? I'd like to meet him, Yu Tian. The young lady suddenly said. You want to meet him? What? Yu Yong was baffled by this sudden turn of events. Why would this young lady who has no connection to the Yu family suddenly want to meet their son? Could she be another one of his fans in the past? Why not? I heard that he used to be an amazing musician, she calmly said. He may have been an amazing musician, but after he got sick he had to give up on music. Furthermore, his condition. I am afraid that you will only be disappointed. Yu Yong said. I won't mind it even if I am disappointed. Let me see him, she insisted. I'm sorry, Lady Chu, but but he's currently in a situation that doesn't allow visitors. If you want, we can notify you when he returns. Tang Li said to her, silently pondering to herself what this Lady Chu's real motives were showing up at their place. Chapter 541. Lady Chu? Chapter 541. Lady Chu, do you know when he'll be back? I like marking things down on my calendar, Lady Chu asked them. Unfortunately, we do not know when he'll return. It all depends on the doctors and his condition. Tang Li shook her head in a regretful manner. Unfortunate indeed. Lady Chu closed her eyes and proceeded to remain silent for the next few minutes. When she finally opened her eyes again, she stood up and said to the Yu family, "Thank you for taking your time to entertain me even though I showed up unannounced. I will return this favor in the future." Don't even mention it. It was an honor to be of help to the esteemed Chu family. Yu Yong said to her with a smile on his face. Let's go. Lady Chu said to the old man before walking towards the exit. Once the young lady and the old man left the scene, Yu Yong sat back on his seat and released a stressful sigh. Why on earth did she even come here? I was nearly shocked to death when the Chu family visited unannounced. The Chu family is one of the most influential families in the world with many successful companies all around the world. However, despite their worldwide influence, nobody really knows much about the Chu family besides what they show the public, which is why Yu family appeared very nervous before them. Compared to the Yu family, the Chu family was incomparably more powerful and influential. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call the Chu family one of the top 10 most powerful families in the world while the Yu family hovered around the top 50. I am more worried about why she insists on meeting that trash. What should we do now? If we don't let them meet, she will definitely return and ask more questions, which wouldn't be good for our hearts, much less or our reputation. There's nothing we can do besides hope that she forgets about our conversation today. We already kicked Yu Tian out of the household, not to mention the previous incident. I am willing to bet my everything that he will not return, and I am not going to plead him to return either. Furthermore, even if she returns, we can simply continue to delay it until she gives up. I highly doubt the Chu family is willing to cause trouble for our family over something so silly. Tang Li nodded her head in agreement. Even if they cause us trouble, it's nothing we can't handle. It's just going to be troublesome. Anyways, I'm going to cultivate to clear my mind. Unless it's an emergency, don't bother me. Tang Li left the scene shortly after, but Yu Yong lingered around a little longer, silently staring at the teacup that Lady Chu had drunk from, and he wondered to himself why she wanted to suddenly meet with Yuan, who hasn't appeared in public for a decade. Whatever. It's best to not think about this anymore. Yu Yong shook his head before walking out of the room, trying his best to forget about what happened today. Meanwhile, after leaving the Yu family, Lady Chu walked to her limousine with the old man. Once they were before the car, the old man opened the door for her, closing it after she went inside. He then walked to the front of the car and entered the driver's seat. Where should we go now, young lady? The old man asked her. However, Lady Chu didn't respond, as she was completely focused on staring at the Yu family's household. The old man didn't rush her and patiently waited for her to respond. A few moments later, she spoke in a calm voice, "We're going to the apartment." "Yes, young lady." The old man immediately started the car and drove her away from the Yu family. Sometime later, they stopped before a tall apartment. "We have arrived at the location, young lady," the old man said. Lady Chu nodded and got out of the car before turning to look at the apartment that Yuan and Meishio lived at. Once the old man also got out of the car, they made their way inside the apartment, but they were quickly stopped by security who didn't recognize them, and after Meixia's incident, security has ramped up in the apartment. "Excuse me, are you a resident here?" the security asked them. "No, but I am here to visit a resident," said Lady Chu. And she quickly added, "His name is Yu Tian and he lives on the 17th floor. The 17th floor? The security raised his eyebrows. Although he didn't know which apartment room the incident occurred in, he knew it happened on the 17th floor. "What's your relationship with this person?" he then asked. "He's my friend and I promised to visit him the last time we spoke, so here I am." Lady Chu spoke with a beautiful smile on her face, causing the middle-aged man to blush. The security didn't think much of her answer, as there was no way that such an elegantly dressed young lady would cause any trouble. "Please sign your name and phone number on this piece of paper and you can be on your way," the security guard said to her. "Thank you." After writing her name and phone number down, Lady Chu and the old man took the elevator to the 17th floor before approaching the door at the end. As they approached apartment number 17F, the young lady could feel her body shaking uncontrollably. "Are you okay, young lady?" The old man asked her when he noticed this. Yes, I am just a little nervous and excited, she nodded. The old man no longer said anything and silently followed her from behind. Once they were standing in front of 17F, Lady Chu did not immediately knock on the door and proceeded to stand there for many minutes without moving. She then closed her eyes to calm down, reopening them after taking a few deep breaths. After a decade, I have finally found Yuan. Once she was ready, Lady Chu lifted her slender arm and knocked on the door, completely unaware that the residents of 17F were away. Chapter 542, Following the Information. Knock knock. Lady Chu knocked on the door with a resolute expression on her graceful face, but her heart was beating irregularly, almost like she'd just ran a marathon. After all, she had waited over a decade for this moment. A few moments went by without anyone answering the door, and Lady Chu patiently waited for an entire minute before knocking on the door again. However, nobody answered the door. How weird. Where could he be at this time? According to my information, he rarely leaves home. Lady Chu wondered out loud. Let's wait here for a bit, she then said to the old man. I understand. He nodded. Minutes quickly turned into hours, yet Yuan showed no sign of returning. Perhaps he moved out after that incident? The old man suddenly suggested. That's not possible. I checked with the intelligence agency right before we came here. They said that Yuan hasn't moved out. Lady Chu said with a puzzled frown on her face. Eventually she retrieved her cell phone and dialed a certain number. Hey, it's me. I want to know where Yuan went. He's not home and I have waited for many hours. A few minutes later, the person on the other side of the phone said, apparently Meishio Yuan's caretaker brought 2 plane tickets to Yang City. I assumed they went there for some reason. Yang City? What is he doing there? Lady Chu raised her eyebrows in a puzzled manner. Can you check the system to see when they will return? She then asked. I have already checked the system for you, young lady, but it appears that they didn't buy a ticket home yet. So either they don't plan on returning or they don't know when they'll return, huh? Keep me updated and try to find out where they went after going to the Yang City. Roger, young lady. Lady Chu released a deep sigh after hanging up the phone. I waited 10 years for this moment, and he's gone off to another city with another woman? How troublesome. Will we be heading to Yang City? The old man suddenly asked her. Of course, and we're not going to stop until I find him. I understand. Allow me to prepare the airplane. The old man nodded before taking out his cell phone and making a few calls. I have notified the masters that we will be going to Yang City. They said to stay away from the 6 spiritual families' territory. Okay. The 2 of them left the apartment shortly after and returned to the car. Once they were inside, they drove to the airport, where their private airplane was already prepared for them, and they lifted into the air shortly after boarding. Meanwhile, in the Jaded Garden, Yuan and Meishio returned to the Immortal Caves after another day of intensive training. After a quick shower, they went to the Silver Restaurant for dinner. At night, they would either go to sleep or cultivate. Yuan decided to go to sleep since his cultivation base was barely improving after he entered Spirit Master. Meishio decided to cultivate, as that would mean she didn't need to share a bed with Yuan, and she also wanted to take advantage of the rich spiritual energy in the area. The 2 of them would repeat their next few days in such a manner. By now, Meishio has completely familiarized herself with the Bao, and she would even spar with some of the instructors. Okay, let's end it here today. The instructor said to Meishio after training with her for half an hour. Thank you for the session today, Instructor Li. Meishio bowed to her afterward. Even though I am supposed to be training you, I am also getting good training out of this. You have improved vastly after just a few days. At this rate, you'll surpass me after a few more weeks. Anyways, before you leave, I should let you know that there will be a small competition amongst the archery disciples tomorrow afternoon. If you want to see how you compare with the others, you should join the competition. The prize will be a premium bow crafted by Elder Hong himself. Tomorrow, right? I will be there. Meishio nodded. After saying her goodbyes, she went back down to the first floor, where Yuan was training with Wang Ming. The 2 of them have been practicing basically every day. In fact, they fought so much that the other disciples in the gymnasium would no longer stop to watch them, as it was such a common occurrence. The sound of wood colliding with each other would resound every time Yuan or Wang Ming swings their sword, creating this somewhat rhythmic sound. Chem? Is it already evening? Yuan stopped sparring with Wang Ming once he noticed Meixia's presence, as she would always appear when it was starting to get dark outside. After Meishio nodded, Yuan said to Wang Ming, let's stop here today. All right. Oh, and before you go, there will be a friendly competition between the elite disciples next week. This will be a good opportunity for you to see what it's like fighting the other disciples, as they all wield different weapons. A competition, huh? That sounds interesting. Yuan nodded and he continued, where will it be held? I can take you there. I will tell you more about it the day before. Sometime later, Yuan and Meishio returned to the Immortal Caves. Meanwhile, somewhere in Yang City, Lady Chu picked up her phone that had been ringing. Did you find out where Tian went? She asked the person on the other side. Yes. According to our intel, they got a helicopter service that brought them to the Jaded Garden, and they haven't returned yet, so there's a good chance that they are still there. Jaded Garden? Lady Chu immediately frowned when she heard this information, as she knew that was where the 6 spiritual families were located. In fact, it was the core of their headquarters. However, she was advised to stay away from the 6 spiritual families, putting her in a difficult situation. Chapter 543, Archery Competition. After pondering for a moment, Lady Chu retrieved her phone and dialed a number. Good evening, esteemed father. I am currently in a difficult situation and I need your help, she said. Immediately, a frantic voice resounded from the phone. What happened? Are you in danger? Where are you? I will immediately send support. Calm down, father. I am fine. Anyways, you told me to stay away from the 6 spiritual families, but I might have to see them and I was hoping you'd let me go. Her father didn't immediately respond and took a long moment to ponder. Sometime later, he asked her in a solemn voice, does this have anything to do with the person you are looking for? Yes, it does. According to the intelligence agency, he is inside the Jaded Garden, and I have to go see him. After another moment of silence, her father released a low sigh. I promised you that if you managed to endure your training that lasted over a decade, I would let you meet this person. Although I would have preferred that you stayed away from the 6 spiritual families since there's no other way. Go ahead. Just try to keep your identity hidden. I will have people on standby near that place just in case you encounter any trouble with them. Thank you, father. I love you. Mwah. After kissing her father through the phone, Lady Chu hung up and turned to look at her caretaker with a smile on her face. We are going to Jaded Garden, she declared. I understand. The old man nodded. The following morning, they boarded a private helicopter and made their way to the Jaded Garden. Meanwhile, Yuan and Meishio had just finished eating breakfast. There's going to be a competition between the archery disciples and I am going to participate in it, so I might be a little later than usual today, Meishio said to him as they walked to the training area. Really? Can I watch it? I need a break from training as well, Yuan asked her. I think so. I will ask the instructor. Okay. After arriving at the training area, Yuan said, give me a minute to speak with Wang Ming since he's probably expecting to train with me today. He then went inside the gymnasium on the first floor, and as had expected, Wang Ming approached him with a sword in his grasp. You ready? Wang Ming asked him in a casual manner, feeling completely familiar with Yuan after sparring with him for the past few days. Sorry, but I am going to take a break today to watch me, Feng participate in an archery tournament, Yuan said to him. Oh, right, there was something like that going on today. All right. I guess I will take a break as well. To tell you the truth, my body has been aching for a while now ever since we started sparring, but this means I am getting good training so I don't mind it. And since I have nothing else to do, allow me to follow you. Thus, Wang Ming tagged alongside Yuan to watch Meixia's competition. A few minutes later, they arrive on the 4th floor, where the instructor was already waiting for them. That's player Yuan, huh? He certainly gives off an unfathomable aura. The archery instructor, who was a mid-level spirit warrior, stared at Yuan for a moment before turning to look at Meishio. The competition won't begin until the afternoon, but we can start making our way there now. Meishio nodded, and they followed the instructor to the outdoor training area, but they continued walking a little further down the path, where they arrived before a massive grassland with many people already setting up the targets for the competition. The moment they arrived, the disciples there turned to look at them. Hey look, is that her? That genius who can spar with an instructor after a few days? One of the disciples there whispered to another. I think so. My instructor had been talking about her with another instructor and I happened to overhear them. Is she really that good? Has anybody here seen her archery skills? Nope. Me neither. After a disciple reaches a certain skill level, they would rarely visit the training building since they would receive new and more professional instructors that will teach them privately, hence why nobody there recognized Meishio. Since we have some time, allow me to explain the competition to you. The instructor said to Meishio. There will be 4 different exercises, each testing your archery skills. For the first exercise, you simply need to shoot a still target to earn points, and the further target you hit, the more points you will receive. For the second exercise, you will have to shoot a moving target, but it won't be any ordinary targets. They change things up every year, so I can't go too deep into this one. You will understand what I mean during the competition. For the third exercise, you will be standing on a moving platform while trying to shoot your target. And for the last exercise, you will have to hunt some live targets using only your bow and arrow, but there's a catch. You cannot kill these targets or that will result in a loss of points. Meishio raised her eyebrows. How is she supposed to hunt something without killing it? It didn't make any sense to her. You probably have a few questions, but you don't need to worry, since they will all be answered later when they give more details about the competition. Until then, sit back, relax, and clear your mind. The instructor left them alone afterward to prepare for the competition. What do you think? You confident in winning? Yuan asked her. I can't really say for sure since I don't know how good the others are, but I will definitely try my best to win this competition, she said. Chapter 544. The First Event. By the time the preparations were complete, all of the participants entering the competition have arrived at the place, and one of the instructors there gathered all of the participants there. The competition will start earlier than scheduled since everyone is here and the preparations are already complete. Take 10 minutes to prepare yourselves. After speaking with the contestants, the instructor went to lead the spectators to the bleachers nearby. Good luck, Yuan said to Meishio before going to the bleachers with Wang Ming and the others. Once the spectators were seated, one of the instructors there began talking about the competition. For this competition, you will need to earn points from 4 different events, and at the end of the competition, the one with the highest score wins. As for the reward, Elder Hong from the Hong family will personally craft you a bow. As the instructor started explaining, 6 figures wearing exquisite robes could be seen approaching the area, instantly attracting the people's attention. Look over there. It's the Grand Elders. And they're all here. Wow, it's rare to see them all together besides grand celebrations or during important events. I don't think they were even here during the last competition. It must be because of that person. The people there turned to look at the only individual that was wearing a mask sitting in the bleachers. And just as the spectators had expected, after the Grand Elders spoke with the instructors, they began approaching them at the bleachers. Greetings, Grand Elders. Everybody there but Yuan suddenly stood up and bowed to the Grand Elders in a respectful voice. Don't mind us. Senior Wang said to them. We're just here to spectate the competition just like the rest of you. The Grand Elders then turned to look at Yuan and clasped their hands towards him. It's been a while, Taoist Yuan. How has the Jaded Garden been treating you the past few days? Senior, she said to him. It's been great. I have gained a lot of experience here, yet there is still so much for me to do, so I'm thinking about extending my stay here if you don't mind. The Grand Elders were ecstatic to hear that Yuan was planning on staying longer than a week. At this rate, he might even decide to join them. That's great to hear. If you need anything, just let any of us know. Senior Wang said to him before they went to take a seat in the bleachers. Of course, they sat around Yuan and Wang Ming. Meanwhile, the instructors began explaining the first part of the event. For the first event, you will be shooting still targets. There will be 3 difficulties. 150 meters, 300 meters, and lastly, 500 meters. You can choose to shoot whichever distance you want, but if you're looking for the most points, you'll obviously need to hit the furthest target. You get 1 point if you hit the 150-meter target, 2 points for the 300-meter, and 4 points for the 500-meter target. Furthermore, if you hit the red on the target, you will get double the points. You each will get 5 minutes to practice your shots before you officially begin, and once you start, you will get 3 shots with 1 minute between each shot. 500 meters. That's really far. Meishio thought to herself as she stared at the small target in the distance. The longest shot she has taken thus far was only about 200 meters, so this competition will definitely test her skills. Fortunately for her, she had 5 minutes to practice and she wasn't unfamiliar with shooting targets at 500 meters since she used to do it with guns. After the explanation, the instructors told the participants to stand in their lane. A few minutes later, all 20 participants stood in their lane with an identical bow in their grasp alongside a quiver that was filled with arrows, both provided to them as personal items weren't allowed. Once everyone was prepared, the instructor shouted, "Your 5 minutes of practice starts now." The timer started the moment a whistle was blown. The participants immediately began practicing their shots and getting familiarized with the bow. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Arrows rained down from the sky as all 20 participants shot their targets. The majority of the participants went for the 150-meter target at first, with a few going for the 300-meter target. As for the 500-meter target, nobody went for it just yet. After spending a minute on the 150-meter target, Meishu was already used to her new bow, and she immediately began shooting at the 300-meter target. Her first shot landed on the target, but it didn't hit the red, so Meishu tried again. 3 shots later she managed to hit the red. After shooting another 3 shots, all landing in the red, Meishu tried to go for the 500-meter target, but she would miss a dozen of them before finally hitting the target. 5 minutes passed in the blink of an eye, and the instructor blew on the whistle again, signaling them to stop. The spectator looked at the results. Even though it was only a practice round, they could see who had the best results. Although everyone had managed to hit the 500-meter target, not everybody had been able to hit the red, and Meishu was one of the few participants that didn't manage to hit the red in the 500-meter target. However, she wasn't discouraged. Even if she loses the first event, it was not the end for her, as there were 3 more events after this one. Once the practice ended, a couple of people went to clean the arrows off the field and replace the targets. When that was done, the instructor gave the participants a moment to prepare themselves before she blew the whistle, officially starting the competition. Meishu took a deep breath, focusing on the 500-meter target. Even if she doesn't hit the red, she was confident in hitting the target, and a single 500-meter target was worth as much as a 300-meter target in the red, so it made sense to go for the 500-meter target. Once she was ready, Meishu released her fingers, sending the arrow in the bow flying forward. Chapter 545, the second event. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Over a dozen arrows were released almost simultaneously, creating a spectacular scene. A second later, these arrows attached themselves to the 500-meter target without a single one of them missing, and half of these arrows managed to hit the red. However, these participants didn't have any time to look at the results and immediately began preparing for the second shot. 3 minutes passed in a flash, and the instructor blew the whistle, signaling the end of the first event. The instructors then went to look at the targets and tallied the points. A few minutes later, the results were in. Look. As expected, Jenny got first place with 3 perfect shots at the 500-meter target. There are 6 people at second place, huh? Not bad. What's Mi Feng's position in the ranking? Yuan asked Wang Ming as he wasn't able to see the scoreboard with his divine sense. Feng? Let me see. She's ranked 15 out of 20. She got 3 hits on the 500-meter, but none of them had hit the red. Wang Ming answered his question despite thinking that it was a weird question. After all, can't he see the scores himself? A few minutes later, the instructor gathered the participants in another location where the second event would take place, and there was a lot of tall grass in that place. For the second event, you will be shooting moving targets at around 100 meters. Do you see this tall field of grass? There are machines hidden inside that will be throwing apples into the air every second, and you will receive 1 point for every apple you hit in a time limit of 1 minute. These machines will also throw small red marbles into the air, and if you hit these targets, you will receive 3 points instead. There will be no practice for this event. Once the instructor explained the rules of the event, she called one of the participants onto the stage and gave her a minute to mentally prepare herself. The whistle was blown a minute later, and the participant immediately raised her bow, shooting arrows at the apples that were being tossed into the air by the machines hidden within the grass. It was unknown how many machines were hidden in the grass, but the apples would always be tossed at a different location. And there would be a small marble the size of a pebble being thrown into the air after every few apples. Although they were hard to hit, it wasn't impossible, and the participant managed to hit one of them during her minute-long session that exploded into tiny red fragments. 31 points. The instructor announced at the end of her session. Once that participant left the stage, another one entered the stage. 28 points. The instructor announced a minute later. 34 points. 33 points. 29 points. 51 points. As expected of Xiaomi, who is renowned for her fast shooting. Although she isn't good at long-range shooting, she's probably the best when it comes to rapid firing with the bow, and her accuracy is very good as well. The spectators commented as they watched the participants shoot apples and marbles. A dozen names later, it was finally Mixia's turn to enter the stage. Once she was on the stage, Meishu took a minute to calm and clear her mind. The moment the whistle was blown, she raised her bow and started shooting arrows every second, surprising the crowd. Wow. Looks like Xiaomi isn't the only one who's good at rapid fire. Who's that participant? I don't recognize that person. And what is with the mask? You don't know? That's player Yuan's caretaker Feng. What? Really? No wonder. I guess it does require some skills to be player Yuan's caretaker. Although the spectators were surprised at first, once they learned that Meishio was Yuan's caretaker, they were no longer as surprised. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Meishio kept shooting her bow almost every second until the whistle was blown. 60 points? The instructor announced. Wow, that's even better than Xiaomi. How many marbles did she hit? I counted 7. Yeah, she had hit 7. The second event finished half an hour later, and Meishio had achieved first place, boosting her total rank to number 7. Wow, your caretaker is very talented. Where did you find someone like her? Wang Ming asked Yuan. Who knows? Yuan responded with a smile behind his mask. Sometime later, the instructors gathered the participants again at the third location, which was a large but weirdly made platform, and it sort of resembled a treadmill. This is the movable platform. Watch. The instructor pressed a button, and the stage immediately started moving one way like a treadmill. You will need to shoot your targets while standing on this platform. Moreover, your targets will be moving as well. The instructor pointed to the field about 150 meters away, and there were human-figured targets moving left and right in a rhythmic manner. There are 2 targets, one at 150 meters and the other at 300 meters. You get 2 points if you hit the 150-meter target, 3 points if you hit the 300-meter, and like the first event, you will get double points if you hit the red. You will get 5 shots in total for this event with 1 minute for each shot, and the timer will not begin until the whistle blows. Once again, every participant got a minute to mentally prepare themselves, and once the event began, the treadmill-like stage started moving, and it would gradually move faster after each shot. When the treadmill stage reached a desirable speed, the instructor blew the whistle, signaling the beginning of the event. The participant did not immediately shoot and took a moment to familiarize herself with the stage. Half a minute later, she drew her bow and aimed it at the 300-meter target. Whoosh! The arrow flew straight at the target, hitting it square in the chest, but it missed the red by an inch. 5 minutes later, the instructor blew the whistle and said, 17 points. Chapter 546, the third event. How much more difficult do you think the third event is compared to the first or second event? Or is it easier? One of the spectators asked out loud. It should probably be harder than the previous 2 events, especially since you have to constantly run on that treadmill stage. I cannot imagine trying to do what they're doing right now. As expected of the best archers in the spiritual elites. 18 points, 15 points, 21 points, 18 points. Every 5 minutes a new participant would enter the treadmill stage to shoot the targets. About an hour later, Meishio was called onto the stage, and after spending a minute clearing her mind, she readied her bow and started moving on the stage. Meishio shot her bow 30 seconds after the whistle was blown while in a jogging motion. After her first shot was released and the arrow hit the 300-meter target, Meishio could feel the treadmill stage moving a little quicker, forcing her to jog faster as well. Another half a minute later, she shot her second arrow, then her third, and her fourth. By the time she was on her last arrow, the treadmill stage was moving so quickly that it looked like Meishio was sprinting for her life. After taking a deep breath, Meishio pulled the string with her eyes focused on the 300-meter target. She had managed to hit the 300-meter target all 4 times up to this point, but she has not managed to hit the red yet. And on her last second, Meishio released the arrow half a second before the instructor blew on the whistle. Whoosh! Thud! The arrow hit the 300-meter target inside the red. 18 points. After another hour, the third event came to an end, and Meishio actually managed to increase her rank by 1 despite only hitting the red 1 time, reaching 6th place. The instructor gathered all of the participants once again, but she didn't lead them to the last location just yet. Instead, she explained to them about the event first. For the final event, you will be hunting rabbits within a certain area with your bow and arrow. However, you are not allowed to kill them. I repeat, you are not to kill them or you will receive a penalty that is a deduction in points. The fourth event won't start right away since we still need to prepare for it. There will be an hour break, but before I let you go on your break, allow me to explain to you the rules of this event. There will be a total of 10 rabbits at once, and they will all have a bell attached to their tail. Your objective for the final event is to shoot the bell off their tail, and every successful hit without injuring the rabbit will give you 5 points. However, if you injure the rabbit, you will have 10 points deducted, and if you somehow killed the rabbit, you will have 20 points deducted. The participants swallowed nervously when they heard the rules, as this final event could potentially make or break their chances of becoming first place. If they kill even a single rabbit, that would mean having an entire event's worth of points being deducted from them, meaning the points they scored in the previous events would be forfeited, and that could instantly drop even the current first place to the last place. This rule would no doubt put a large amount of burden on the participants, and it made them really nervous for the first time in this competition. The instructor sent the participants away for an hour while they cleaned up the place and prepare for the final event. "You're doing great, Feng," Yuan said to her when she returned. "Thank you, but I am still miles away compared to the others," Meishio said. "You're too humble." Senior Hong chuckled, and he continued, "I heard from the instructors that you only started learning archery a few days ago. Compared to the other disciples that have been practicing since they were young, you're too crazily talented, just like someone else here." Senior Wang nodded and said, "The fact that you're even competing against them is already amazing enough." "What? She only started archery a few days ago? How is that even possible?" Wang Ming was shocked to hear this information for the first time. It was one thing for player Yuan to be a genius, but even his caretaker is a genius? One can only imagine how talented his family is when the caretaker is already this talented. While the participants waited for the final event to be prepared, outside the Jaded Garden where the helicopters are located, a new helicopter arrived at the place. Once the helicopter landed, a beautiful young lady with brown hair flowing down her back and an old man wearing a butler suit stepped outside the helicopter. "The spiritual energy in this place isn't that bad, but it's not as good compared to the spiritual energy at our home," Lady Chu said after checking out the spiritual energy in that place. "Alright, now where do we go?" Lady Chu looked around and she quickly noticed the tall building in the distance. "Let's go check out that place first," she said while pointing to it. They proceeded to approach the building, entering it a few minutes later. "Welcome to the Jaded Hotel. How may I help you today?" The receptionist greeted them the moment they entered. "Why is there a hotel in this middle of nowhere?" Lady Chu raised her eyebrows. The receptionist chuckled a little before replying, "Since most guests visiting this place come in helicopters, the 6 spiritual families decided to build this hotel here for their convenience." "I see. Then can you tell me where the 6 spiritual families are located?" "This is our first time to this place." The receptionist nodded and left the desk. She then took them outside and pointed them in a certain direction. "If you walk straight down that way, you should reach the entrance in about an hour since it's 3 miles away." "I understand. Thank you," Lady Chu said to the receptionist before following the direction she was given. Chapter 547. The Final Event. An hour after the third event, the participants were gathered by the instructors, who led them to a spacious area with short grass and a massive fence that surrounded the area. This area is exactly 1 mile in diameter, and it is where you will be hunting the bells. There will be a total of 10 rabbits in the field, each scoring you 5 points, granted that you don't injure the rabbit. Moreover, each of you will have 30 minutes inside the field. However, you will only have 11 arrows in your quiver, and you are not allowed to reuse an arrow once it has been shot. Doing so will be an automatic failure. After giving the instructions, the instructor sent in the first participant, who immediately began running towards the first rabbit she noticed. Although 30 minutes may seem like a lot for each person, one must consider how many rabbits there were in the field. Since there are 10 rabbits in the field and the participants had 30 minutes, that gave them 3 minutes for each rabbit, not including the time they have to spend running around to find the rabbits. The first participant noticed the first rabbit relatively easily due to the low grass and open field. She then readied her bow and aimed it at the rabbit. However, she didn't release the arrow and held that position for a good minute before finally releasing the arrow, as she wanted to make sure that the rabbit wouldn't suddenly move around. Whoosh! The arrow flew straight at the bell tied to the rabbit's tail by a single strand of string. Ding! The arrow struck the bell perfectly, sending it straight off the rabbit's tail. However, the moment the bell rang, the other rabbits in the vicinity became alert and started jumping around, almost like they are trained to do so. The participant was immediately overwhelmed by 10 rabbits jumping around, not to mention the obnoxious noises caused by the bells that would ring every time a rabbit moved, and there were 9 of them ringing at once, which easily affected the participant's focus. Whoosh! The participant eventually shot another arrow, but it missed the target by a large margin. She then took a few moments to calm herself, but it was much more difficult than she had anticipated. Hell, even the spectators were getting irritated by the constant ringing sounds, much less the participant that was in the middle of it. Heavens! This last event is freaking annoying. I cannot imagine being in the field right now trying to concentrate with all the noises. Right? And they also have to deal with the pressure of trying not to injure the rabbit. A minute later, someone exclaimed in a shocked voice, "Ah! She actually hit the rabbit. How unfortunate." Indeed, the participant had accidentally struck the rabbit with her arrow due to losing her concentration from the constant ringing. The participant could feel her heart getting squeezed in pain when she saw the arrow struck the rabbit. Fortunately for her, the arrow had only struck the rabbit in the leg, or she would have had 20 points deducted instead of 10 points. Of course, 10 points was still massive, and this participant immediately dropped many ranks due to her fatal mistake. After losing 10 points, the participant no longer had the courage to shoot her bow anymore and decided to end her session early. In her mind, she had gained 5 points but lost 10 points, so she only lost 5 points in total. Furthermore, she was no longer in the right state of mind after that one mistake, and if she continued shooting the bow, she would no doubt make another mistake, which could be even more fatal than the first. Thus, the participant decided to leave early. "Instructor, I am done," she raised her hand and said to the instructor outside the field. The instructor didn't say anything and merely nodded her head. She then blew her whistle and the rabbit suddenly stopped jumping around. Once the participant left the field, the instructor went inside to take the injured rabbit and handed it to another disciple, who then took the rabbit to get its injury taken care of. A few minutes later, another rabbit with a bell tied to its tail was brought into the field, and then another participant. Meanwhile, outside the jaded garden, Lady Chu and her butler had just arrived at the entrance. When the guards saw Lady Chu, they were immediately stunned by her noble appearance, as she was an immensely beautiful young lady with an unfathomable aura that made it feel like they lived in two different worlds despite being only a few feet away from her. How may we help you?" The guard stuttered like no tomorrow when he snapped out of his daze to speak with them. "I am here for my friend. Can you take me to him?" Lady Chu asked them with a beautiful smile on her face that immediately made them all blush even harder. "A friend? Who may this friend be?" "Well, he arrived around a week ago. I believe they came in a pair, a man and a woman." Lady Chu responded, purposefully not revealing their identity as she wasn't sure which identity Yuan came to this place as, and saying their name could potentially ruin his secret. "A week ago. A man and woman?" The guards began pondering, as there have been many visitors to the jaded garden ever since they opened up to the public. Despite that, a couple wearing masks appeared in their minds. They figured that only that person could possibly have a relationship with such an esteemed young lady. "Are you talking about player Yuan and his caretaker, Feng?" the guard asked just in case. Lady Chu's expression immediately brightened after hearing Yuan's name, and she quickly nodded, "Yes. I've come here to see my friend Yuan. Can you please take me to him?" Chapter 548, Friend? Player Yuan's friend? The guards looked at each other with weird looks on their faces. They figured player Yuan was the type to not have any friends due to how he played and how reclusive he appears, so it was quite a surprise to learn that he actually had friends. "I'm sorry, but you're going to have to wait a while since we don't know player Yuan's location at the moment," the guard said to them. "We'll go ask around to see if anybody knows of his location. In the meantime, you can wait inside the guest room." Lady Chu put on a pondering face for a moment before speaking. "I don't really like sitting around doing nothing, so can I ask to follow you to ask around? I'd like to see the renowned jaded garden while I am at it if you don't mind." "Of course you can follow us if you want." The guard immediately agreed, as he couldn't resist the temptation of walking around with a beauty by his side. "Great. Thank you in advance." However, there was a problem. The guards exchanged glances once again. The next second, they all turned to look at Lady Chu and shouted simultaneously, "Allow me to take you around." Indeed, the problem was who would be the one to take Lady Chu to find player Yuan? There were 4 of them, and it would make sense for only one of them to leave. While they try to figure out that situation at the competition, over 10 participants have gone into the field and left in less than half an hour despite everyone getting 30 minutes. The reason was simple. Nobody there dared to shoot their second arrow after their first that alerted all of the rabbits. In their mind, it was better to gain 5 points and call it a day than gain 5 points and potentially lose even more just like the first participant. Furthermore, nobody there was really able to focus with all the noise, as it was even giving them a headache. One might think that giving up after the first shot was unsportsmanlike, but nobody really blamed the participants for their actions, not even the Grand Elders. In fact, the spectators even hoped that the participants would give up, as that meant they would have to listen to the ringing less. I don't understand why they would give up. Even though it's a little noisy, they should still try. After all, if they don't, they will never be able to reach first place. Even if they might lose some points, if they don't shoot, they have no chance. Yuan said out loud after seeing so many participants give up. In his mind, weren't they all fighting for first place for the reward? What was the point of being any other place but first place since there was only one prize? I guess they're all just hoping for the others to shoot and lose points, allowing them to achieve first place without doing anything. So they're gambling that others would lose points? Yuan was speechless, as this was his first time seeing such a thing in a competition. As someone who has entered many competitions throughout his life, he has not once hoped that someone would mess up their performance so that he could win. It was simply an unthinkable strategy. Meanwhile, Meishio was called into the field. After handing her a bow and a quiver of 11 arrows, the instructor sent Meishio inside the still field. And just like the other participants, Meishio quickly took her first shot at a rabbit, shooting the bell off its tail successfully. However, what ensued was chaos with the sound of bells resounding in every direction. Ding, ding, ding. Although it wasn't bad at first, the sound gradually got worse and more annoying. Do you think she's going to quit after her first shot as well? The spectators began guessing whether Meishio would leave early like the others or not. And to their surprise, after her first shot, Meishio actually pulled a second arrow from her quiver, her intentions clear. Oh, she's going to shoot. Let's see if she hits the bell or... The participants watched with anticipation. Whoosh! Meishio released her second arrow. Oh no! She struck the rabbit in the leg just like the first participant. That's a 10-point deduction. The participants exclaimed, and they expected her to quit after the second shot. However, to their surprise, almost as though she didn't care about losing points, Meishio actually retrieved the third arrow from the quiver and aimed it at the rabbit that Shed just failed to hit. What? She's still going to shoot after that? Whoosh! The arrow struck the bell this time since the rabbit was injured and couldn't move properly, and for the first time in this event, Meishio became the first to shoot a second bell successfully. After hitting the bell, Meishio lowered her bell and turned to look at the instructor outside. Take the injured rabbit out. I have plenty of time, she said in a calm voice. The instructor nodded and quickly retrieved the injured rabbit from the field. Once that was done, Meishio began looking for her next target. However, she wouldn't shoot another arrow for the next 10 minutes, and she would just silently stand there and watch the rabbits. She's taking her time analyzing the rabbit's movements, huh? What a smart girl. Senior Wang chuckled when she realized what Meishio was doing. These rabbits were trained to move in a specific manner, so if you learn their movements, you will hit them with ease. 20 minutes later, when Meishio only had 10 minutes left, she began moving for the first time, raising her bow and shooting it the next second with barely any pause. Whoosh! The arrow struck the rabbit closest to her, hitting the bell for her third bell. After that, Meishio would go on to rapid-fire her bow, hitting bells upon bells with seemingly no effort, shocking the spectators and the other participants. Chapter 549, Brother Yuan? With a little more than 5 minutes left, Meishio left the field after hitting every single bell off the rabbits, earning her a total of 40 points, and she instantly shot up to first place in the competition. The spectators exploded with cheering after they witnessed the spectacular display. Meanwhile, the other participants were left speechless. Half of them had given up after their first shot, and the other half that hasn't entered the field had planned on giving up, but after witnessing Meixia's display, they began feeling ashamed of themselves for giving up so easily. Therefore, the following participants to enter the field after Meishio would go on to shoot all of the arrows in her quiver regardless if they'd hit a rabbit or not. In the end, most of them would go on to hit at least 7 bells. However, only 2 of them had managed to avoid injuring the rabbits. Once all of the participants went into the field, the instructor blew the whistle, signaling the end of the competition. At the end of the competition, the participants were gathered for the results. Congratulations to Disciple Xiaomi for achieving first place. You may speak with Grand Elder Hong afterward to discuss your reward. The instructor announced the winner of the competition. Although Meishio had taken first place with her performance, it was only temporary, and she ended up in the second place with first place ahead by only 5 points. If Meishio hadn't struck a rabbit that cost her 10 points, she would have won the competition. However, Meishio was neither upset nor bitter since she never expected to win the competition, and she was satisfied with the experience she gained throughout the competition that she considered more of a training of sorts. Furthermore, getting second place was already well above her expectations. Good job getting second place, Yuan said to Meishio after she returned. Thank you. I was told that you only recently learned how to use the bow. Is that true? Wang Ming asked her as he still couldn't truly believe it. Yes, Meishio confirmed, leaving him speechless. Regardless, that was an amazing performance. I would have never known that you were a beginner unless someone told me. Actually, you're already an expert. Senior Wang said. Haha. Miss Feng, even though you didn't win the competition, your boldness during the last event was very impressive. I even dare say that without your performance, the other participants wouldn't have dared to shoot more than one arrow, said Senior Hong. And he continued, therefore I am going to craft you a bow as well. Really? Meishio was pleasantly surprised by Senior Hong's words. Yes. Consider this a gift from me for entertaining us. Senior Hong laughed. The other participants looked at Meishio with envious gazes. If they didn't give up and had figured out the rabbit's movements earlier, they could have also gotten a bow from Senior Hong. Meanwhile, somewhere in the Jaded Garden, Lady Chu and one of the gate guards walked around asking the people if they knew where Yuan was located, and to their surprise, the first person they encountered knew his location. Player Yuan? He should be at the archery competition at the moment. Archery competition? Is he participating? Lady Chu asked. I don't know. Where's the competition held? The guard asked the man. Once they got the directions, Lady Chu and her butler began following the guard to that location. If you don't mind me asking, how long have you known Player Yuan? The guard asked Lady Chu as they walked. I have known him ever since we were young, she said with a gentle smile on her face that caused the guard to swallow nervously when he saw it. So you're childhood friends, huh? How envious. No, we're more than just childhood friends. You can even call us a family, she said. The guard raised his eyebrows, unable to comprehend the real meaning behind her words. Sometime later they arrived at the location of the archery competition, and when they arrived the competition had just ended. The moment they arrived, Lady Chu instantly noticed the tall figure wearing a black mask within the crowd, and she proceeded to stand there and silently stare at him with a dazed look on her face. At this moment, it seemed to her as though the world had stopped moving, that everything else but the masked man had disappeared from her sight, almost there was only him and her in this world. Brother Yuan? She muttered in a low voice. However, despite her excitement and desire to jump into his embrace, Lady Chu didn't immediately run to him. Instead, she stood there without moving, almost as though she didn't know what to do. After waiting for over a decade for this moment, Lady Chu figured that she would be prepared to finally see him again, but to her surprise, when it was actually time to see him, her body froze with nervousness. What if he doesn't remember me? This thought that hasn't appeared in her mind for the last decade suddenly appeared for the first time. Indeed, she feared that Yuan had forgotten about her. After all, 10 years was a long time and people tend to forget about their childhood. Maybe I should just watch over him from a distance for now. Lady Chu suddenly had this thought. However, before she could even decide, she noticed the person that she had been staring at suddenly turned to look in her direction. Lady Chu's heart immediately began throbbing like crazy, and her body became so stiff that she couldn't even move a finger. Fortunately for her, Yuan had only glanced in her direction because he felt that someone was staring at him from her direction, but his divine sense wasn't strong enough to see Lady Chu, so he turned back around a moment later. Lady Chu released a sigh of relief after seeing this, but then she became even more nervous a few seconds later. What should I do now? She wondered inwardly. Chapter 550. Do you remember me, Brother Yuan? Brother Yuan. You're so close to me yet you feel so far away. Lady Chu continued to stare at Yuan's figure from a distance for many moments. The guard wondered when she was going to approach Yuan, but he noticed her expression and decided to simply wait for her to do something. The old man stared at Lady Chu with a profound gaze, as this is his first time seeing her acting this timid and nervous, looking like a lost little girl. Young lady. The old man suddenly called out to her and he asked, "Shall we go home?" No. Lady Chu subconsciously responded. She then took a deep breath to calm herself down, but a single breath wasn't enough, so she took a few more deep breaths. Once she was ready, Lady Chu took her first step forward and slowly approached Yuan. The people there quickly noticed Lady Chu's presence due to her formidable aura that caused them to subconsciously turn and look at her, almost like their senses felt something threatening coming from her direction. When the Grand Elders saw Lady Chu, their eyes immediately widened with shock, but it was not because they recognized her. In fact, they didn't know her. A spirit master. Senior Wang muttered in a low voice that was filled with disbelief. Indeed, Lady Chu was emitting the aura of a spirit master just like them, albeit a little weaker. However, despite that, It was incredibly shocking to them since Lady Chu only looked to be around 18 years old. "Who is that?" one of the grand elders asked as Lady Chu slowly approached them. "No idea, but to be a spirit master at such a young age. I thought it was only possible for someone like Taoist Yuan." With everybody there suddenly turning to look in the same direction, Yuan subconsciously turned his head and did the same. Once Lady Chu entered his divine senses range, Yuan was finally able to see the beautiful young lady that stunned everyone there. "Who is that? She looks so familiar for some reason." Yuan didn't recognize Lady Chu at first, but he felt a sense of nostalgia when he saw her sparkling hazel eyes. However, he was still unable to recall where had seen her before. Lady Chu walked until she stood a few meters away from Yuan, and she proceeded to stand there in silence. "How may we help you?" Senior Wang asked when Lady Chu didn't say anything for a while. Of course, Lady Chu didn't respond to her, as the only thing in her eyes and mind right now was the masked man that was only standing a couple of meters away from her. "Brother Yuan, I have finally fulfilled our promise," Lady Chu suddenly muttered in a low voice. Yuan's body shivered for some reason when this unknown lady called him Brother Yuan, and his sense of nostalgia grew more intense. "Do you remember me, Brother Yuan?" Lady Chu asked him in a slightly louder voice. Yuan stared at Lady Chu intensively for many moments before shaking his head. "I am sorry, but I don't recognize you." "Have we met before?" Lady Chu closed her eyes and released a deep sigh. She then opened her eyes that flickered with resolve, and she spoke in a calm voice. "Well, I won't blame you for not recognizing me since it has been over a decade since our last meeting, and we were only children back then." "Over a decade ago?" Yuan raised his eyebrows. Suddenly, the image of a little girl with brown hair and hazel eyes appeared in his mind, and she somewhat resembled this beautiful young lady. Yuan's body trembled when he suddenly had an idea of this young lattice identity, but before he could open his mouth to speak, Lady Chu retrieved a silver harmonica from her pocket and blew into it, creating a beautiful sound that was filled with harmony. Seeing the silver harmonica in Lady Chu's grasp and hearing this song, Yuan was absolutely certain about her identity. "Why you are, Lulu?" Yuan spoke in a dumbfounded voice. A blissful smile appeared on Lady Chu's beautiful face, and she responded in a clear voice, "It's not Lulu. It's Liuxiang. How many times have I told you to stop calling me by that nickname now?" Of course, Yuan remembered that her name was Liuxiang, but he was used to calling her Lulu since he wasn't able to pronounce the name Liuxiang properly back then, so he gave her a much simpler name to call, and that nickname was Lulu. What are you doing here?" Yuan randomly asked her, as he wasn't able to think properly due to her sudden appearance. "What do you think, you idiot? I came here to find you since you didn't come looking for me, just like we had promised. Or did you forget about that?" Lady Chu said. Memories began flashing inside Yuan's head after hearing her words. Outside this remote building that had the sign Jade Orphanage on the doors, he stood before Lady Chu when she was still a little kid. "Don't leave me behind, Brother Yuan. Don't be sad, Lulu. Although I have to leave now, we will definitely see each other again in the future. If I cannot look for you for some reason, then you should come to look for me. Erase my harmonica. You can keep it until our next meeting." Yuan handed her a silver harmonica that was too big for his small hands. "It's a promise?" After hugging her, Yuan left the orphanage with a beautiful woman that was Mei Feng, who had come to take him away from the orphanage after the Yu family adopted him into their family, and that was the last they saw each other. "I remember. I'm sorry that I couldn't find you." "No, I didn't even try to." Yuan apologized to her in a sighing voice after recalling some of his memories that he hid deep within his consciousness after entering the Yu family. "You don't have to apologize since I am well aware of your situation. It was simply impossible for you to do anything. Anyways, why don't we continue this conversation somewhere more private?" Lady Chu said. "Okay." Yuan quickly nodded. Chapter 551, Chu Liuxiang. "Let's go, Brother Yuan," Lady Chu said as she walked to stand beside Yuan. Yuan nodded and said, "We can go back to the Immortal Caves for now." He then turned to look at the Grand Elders and said to them, "Please excuse us." The Grand Elders didn't say anything and silently nodded their heads in a dazed manner. "Follow me." Yuan began walking back to the Immortal Caves with Lady Chu following closely beside him. As for Meishio, she quietly followed them from behind, silently wondering to herself what kind of relationship they had and how they knew each other. Lady Chu's butler also followed them from behind Meishio. "I don't recall seeing this woman before. Just where did she meet Yuan? They also seem to go way back." Meishio wondered to herself. She had been with Yuan ever since he was adopted into the Yu family, and as Meifeng's daughter she got to see a lot of influential people. However, she doesn't recall this hazel-eyed beauty, who definitely looked very influential just by her graceful appearance alone. Their journey back to the Immortal Caves was a quiet one without anyone starting a conversation. Yuan was still in a daze because of his sudden reunion with Lady Chu, who has been by his side even before he could learn how to walk in the orphanage. As for Lady Chu, she was too nervous to say anything, and she was satisfied with just being by his side again. Eventually they reached the Immortal Caves and Yuan brought them inside. "Is he with you?" Yuan turned to look at the old man that had been following them but stopped at the door. "Yes, he's my caretaker. You can trust him." Lady Chu nodded. "Are you coming inside?" Yuan asked him. "I don't want to disturb the young lattice reunion, so I will wait out here until you're done," he said to them in a calm voice. Once they entered the Immortal Caves and sat down, Yuan removed his mask and said, "Before we start our conversation, allow me to introduce you to each other. Meishio, this is Liuxiang, a very important friend of mine from the orphanage that I used to live at before I was adopted into the Yu family. And Liuxiang, this is Meishio, my caretaker, who is also very important to me." "Hello," Meishio said to her in a low voice. "Hello." Lady Chu responded in a similarly low voice. Although this is Meixia's first time hearing about Lady Chu, it wasn't the same for Lady Chu, who has known about Meishio for many years now. After the brief introduction, they returned to being silent, as both of them had so many questions but didn't know where to start. Eventually Yuan said, "Well, let's start with you, Liuxiang. What happened to you after I left the orphanage? I know I told you to stop calling me Lulu, but it doesn't feel right when you call me anything else, so you can continue calling me Lulu," Lady Chu said. And she continued, "Anyways, shortly after you left the orphanage, I was also adopted and entered the Chu family, so I am currently Chu Liuxiang." "I see. I hope you lived a good life after your adoption," Yuan said to her. Chu Liuxiang chuckled and said, "Hardly. My life has been repetitive, boring, and even painful at times ever since I joined the Chu family." "What do you mean?" Yuan asked. "You can probably tell from my aura that I am a spirit master just like you, right? Well, the Chu family is actually a hidden cultivation family, but unlike the 6 spiritual families that live in seclusion and away from society, we hide in plain sight. The Chu family is an immensely successful family in the modern world with many businesses around the world, but at the same time, it's also a cultivation family that has known about cultivation since ancient times." "So you've been cultivating ever since you were young?" Yuan asked. "Yes. Apparently, I have the perfect body for cultivation, and someone from the Chu family noticed my talents by chance and decided to take me into their family. In other words, they adopted me for my cultivation talents, and I have been cultivating in seclusion ever since I joined the Chu family. That means I cannot leave the Chu family's territory. Although they have a lot of land and there were a lot of things to do, it was still a boring life, especially since I spend most of my time training and cultivating alone. Hell, I can even count the number of people I have met during the last 10 years using just my hands. Of course, I am still grateful to the Chu family for adopting me, and they treat me very well." "That does sound like a very boring life." Yuan agreed with her. He can imagine how Chu Liuxiang felt since he also had to spend many years in seclusion inside his room and without the ability to move his body. It was painful at times, but it wasn't that bad overall, especially when compared to your life at the Yu family. Chu Liuxiang sighed. Seeing Yuan's puzzled face, Chu Liuxiang continued, "I know what the Yu family made you go through, Brother Yuan. I know how they treated you like a tool for their own benefit and how they tossed you away like trash when you suddenly became sick and was no longer useful to them. I am sorry that I wasn't able to come to you sooner, Brother Yuan, but I wasn't allowed to do anything until I finished my training, nor was I aware of your situation until the end of my training. If I had known about it earlier, then maybe you wouldn't have had to suffer so much. You didn't deserve any of that." Chu Liuxiang sighed, even feeling the urge to cry. A gentle smile appeared on Yuan's face after hearing her words, and he said, "It's okay. Although it was painful at times, there were also joyous moments that made everything worth it in the end, at least that's what I think." Chapter 552, Harmonica? After all, I got to meet with people like Meishio, Yuro, and the others. If I hadn't joined the Yu family, I wouldn't be in this position right now, so even if I had to suffer a little, it was all worth it in the end," Yuan said with a gentle smile on his face. "Yuan?" Meishio looked at him with an emotional gaze. "By the way, how did you manage to find me? Even though I came here as Yuan, there are many Yuans in this world. How did you know I was the one you were looking for?" Yuan asked Chu Liuxiang a few moments later. I knew you would achieve great things in the future, so when I learned about player Yuan, I was certain that you were the one I was looking for. Of course, I followed you, Tian, not Yuan. My family owns an intelligence agency, so I have a lot of information, and I followed your information to the Jaded Garden. Ah, but you don't have to worry about your identity as player Yuan being leaked, since only my parents, my caretaker, and myself know about it. Of course, they can all be trusted. Yuan nodded. Now that he can move around properly, he wouldn't care as much even if his identity is leaked. After all, he now has the power to protect himself and those around him. Brother Yuan, here you go. Chu Liuxiang retrieved the silver harmonica again and placed it on the table in front of them. Now that I have reunited with you and fulfilled our promise, this harmonica shall return to its rightful owner. Yuan looked at the silver harmonica for a moment before picking it up. Even though it was much lighter than he remembers, it still brought back the countless memories he had with this harmonica. I still remember how you and the others would ask me to play this harmonica every chance you got, and how you would bug me until I agreed, he said with a gentle smile on his face. He then placed the harmonica on his lips and began blowing air into it. Music notes filled the room as Yuan played the song that used to fill the orphanage with joy. Hearing and seeing Yuan play the silver harmonica again, tears began flowing from Chu Liuxiang's eyes, as she had dreamed of this scene nearly every day for over a decade. A few minutes later, Yuan placed the silver harmonica back on the table and said to Chu Liuxiang, "You can keep this harmonica." Really? Why don't you want it? She asked him in a surprised voice. It's not that I don't want it, but it has been in your possession for far longer, so you are now the rightful owner. Furthermore, I believe that you value this harmonica more, so I cannot convince myself to take it away from you. Are you sure, Brother Yuan? Chu Liuxiang asked, feeling a little hesitant. Yes, I am sure. If you say so. She picked up the harmonica and held it close to her chest. Even though she has had this harmonica for over a decade and had only let it go for a few minutes, it gave her a completely different feeling in her hands now, and it actually felt like it belonged to her. Lulu, what are you going to do now that you found me? Are you going to return to the Chu family anytime soon? Yuan asked her a moment later. No, I have already completed my training, so I don't really have to return until my parents summon me for whatever reason, and I plan on staying with you for a while. If you don't mind. I don't mind, but there really isn't anything to do in this place besides training, Yuan said. Are you staying in the Jaded Garden permanently? Chu Liuxiang then asked. No, we're only here temporary as trial disciples. We were supposed to leave after a week, but we decided to stay here a little longer for more training. I see. Well, I don't really care where we are or what we are doing as long as I am by your side, she said. The two of them proceeded to talk about their own lives after leaving the orphanage until it was late and Yuan was getting hungry. Let's go get some food to eat before we continue. I know this place that cooks extremely delicious food, Yuan said to her. Okay. After wearing their mask, Yuan and the other two left the Immortal caves. Sebastian, we're going to get some food, Chu Liuxiang said to the old man who had been standing outside the Immortal caves like a statue this entire time. I understand, he said, and he began following them to the restaurant. Him? Who is this young lady? Your girlfriend? Chef San asked in a joking tone when he saw Chu Liuxiang with Yuan. Hello, I am Chu Liuxiang, a longtime friend of Yuan, she introduced herself. I see. What would you like to eat today? Or would you prefer I cook something random like usual? Chef San then asked. Do you have any preferences, Lulu? We don't really care what we eat since everything Chef San cooks is amazing. Yuan asked her. I'm not a picky eater. I will have whatever they are eating, she said. All right. Give me some time. Chef San then went to the back to start cooking. While they waited, Chu Liuxiang went outside to play the harmonica for Yuan and the others. You have gotten really good at playing the harmonica, Lulu? Yuan chuckled and he continued, especially compared to back then when you would blow it randomly and call it a unique song. Chu Liuxiang smiled and said, besides training and cultivation, I would spend all of my spare time playing the harmonica. Of course, I am still nowhere as good as you even if I were to compare my current self to you back then. Here. It's your turn now, she then handed the harmonica to him in a casual manner. Yuan accepted the harmonica and began blowing into it without cleaning it even though Chu Liuxiang had played it just moments ago. Chu Liuxiang blushed slightly when she saw this, but she didn't say anything. Chapter 553, A Beauty on Each Side of the Bed. Thank you for the food, Chef San. After waiting for about half an hour, they finally received their food, and they immediately made their way back to the Immortal caves. Once they were seated, they began eating the food. Wow, you're right. This food is amazing. I dare say it's even better than Sebastian's food, and that's a huge compliment. Chu Liuxiang's eyes widened with surprise the moment she tasted the explosive flavor. And in just a few minutes, Chu Liuxiang consumed all of her food, becoming the first to finish. Brother Yuan, I just noticed this, but you sure have a lot of food. Can you really eat all of that? She asked him when she noticed that his portions were multiple times larger than theirs. Him? Yeah, I can eat all of it. He quickly swallowed before nodding his head. So you have a really big appetite, huh? That's something I should note down for the future. She mumbled in a low voice, but Yuan wasn't able to understand the meaning behind her words. Sometime later they finished all of the food. Meishiu stood up and prepared to clean the table, but the old man Sebastian said to her, "It's okay, young miss. Allow me, the guest, to clean the table for you." Okay. She nodded. While Sebastian cleaned the place, Chu Liuxiang asked, "How many rooms do you have in this place?" "There's only one room and one bed." Yuan calmly responded. "So you have been sleeping together?" Chu Liuxiang looked at them with her eyes slightly widened. "Yes," he casually responded. Chu Liuxiang turned silent for a moment before asking, "Can I see the bed?" "Of course. That's the bedroom." Yuan pointed to their room. Chu Liuxiang then opened the door to take a look at the size of the bed, and sure enough, there was plenty of space, enough for 3, perhaps even 4 people. "Do you mind if I sleep with you too?" Chu Liuxiang then asked them in a resolute voice. "Of course. Where else are you going to sleep?" Yuan said. "Young Master Yuan, I will sleep out here in the living room on the couch," Sebastian said to him, since he has no intention of sharing a bed with 3 young people, and one of them was even his master. "As long as you're not sleeping on the floor." Yuan nodded. Sometime later, Chu Liuxiang said, "Brother Yuan, I am going to wash myself." "Where is the bathroom?" "That door right there." "Do you have any extra clothes with you?" Yuan asked her after realizing that they didn't have any luggage with them. "All right. Now that you mention it, we left them inside the helicopter," Chu Liuxiang said. "I shall go and retrieve our luggage at this moment," Sebastian said. "Are you sure? It's already really dark outside. This is also your first day here, so you might get lost." Yuan asked him. "If you want, I can lend you my pajamas for today since I have an extra pair," Meishiu suddenly said. "If you don't mind." Chu Liuxiang calmly agreed. After Meishiu handed her own pajamas and a towel to Chu Liuxiang, she whispered something in Chu Liuxiang's ears. "No, I don't need them. Thank you for asking." Chu Liuxiang shook her head before entering the bathroom and locking the door. About half an hour later, Chu Liuxiang returned outside while wearing Meixia's pajamas that felt oddly fit, almost as though they belonged to her. "So we are equal when it comes to our body, huh?" Chu Liuxiang wondered inwardly. After Chu Liuxiang finished, Yuan went to clean himself next. Of course, Meishiu didn't follow him inside like she normally would, as there was no way that she'd do anything to Yuan with guests around. Meishiu went inside the bathroom after Yuan, and Sebastian was the last to enter. Once they were ready to sleep, Chu Liuxiang followed Yuan and Meishiu inside their bedroom while Sebastian slept on the couch. "Where do you want to sleep?" Yuan asked Chu Liuxiang, giving her the choice to pick. "Brother Yuan, you can sleep in the middle. I will just sleep beside you," she said. "Okay," he nodded. A few moments later, Yuan laid in the middle of the bed while sandwiched by 2 beauties, one on each side. If any human being that wasn't Yuan saw this scene, they would definitely vomit blood from envy. "Brother Yuan, do you remember how we would always share a bed in the orphanage?" she asked him. "Yes, because you were always afraid that something was hiding under your bed," he chuckled. "I don't recall such a thing. You must have remembered it wrong." She quickly refuted with a slightly rosy face. The two of them proceeded to spend many minutes reminiscing their time together in the orphanage. Meishiu had her eyes closed the entire time, seemingly asleep, but she was actually wide awake and silently listened to their conversation, as she was learning a lot about Yuan and his relationship with Chu Liuxiang. And the more she listened, the more obvious it was to her that they were definitely very intimate with each other. Meishiu then recalled what her mother told her not long ago, that someone will take Yuan away from her if she's too slow, and this caused her heart to tremble. "Sorry, Meishiu, I got too caught up in our conversation and almost forgot that we're trying to sleep," Yuan suddenly said to her. However, Meishiu didn't say anything and pretended to be asleep. Seeing that Meishiu didn't respond, Yuan released a sigh of relief knowing that she managed to fall asleep despite their conversation. "Let's lower our voices so that we don't wake her up," he said to Chu Liuxiang in a low voice, who was lying on the bed on her side so that she could stare at Yuan's face. They then continued reminiscing about their past for pretty much the majority of the night. Chapter 554. Do you desire revenge? Brother Yuan, I have been wondering. Aren't you angry at the Yu family for what they have done to you? Don't you desire revenge? They treated you like an animal after all. If I speak with my family, they should be able to do something about the Yu family. Chu Liuxiang suddenly asked him after they finished reminiscing their past. Honestly, I have never really thought about it seriously. When you say revenge, what do you expect me to do? I do not like unnecessary violence, and even though they have done some horrible things that deserve some sort of punishment, I don't think violence is the right answer. I know, Brother Yuan, that you're not the violent type. However, there are other methods to cause pain to the Yu family without actually hurting them. For example, you can ruin their company, or you can destroy their family by tearing them apart. How is that any different? They all sound pretty violent. Yuan sighed. The most obvious difference is that you won't need to physically hurt them since you will be doing it mentally. You can simply start up your own company and grow to become an even more successful business than the Yu family. That will definitely make them regret throwing you away. Or, you can reveal yourself as player Yuan, instantly gaining worldwide fame. This will make the Yu family regret ever treating you wrongly, and they will be kicking themselves for the rest of their life knowing that they tossed away the one and only player Yuan. Yuan turned silent to ponder. Can these methods really help him take revenge against the Yu family for mistreating him and many other things? However, it does sound better than getting violent with the Yu family. Brother Yuan, if you want, I can help you. Let's make the Yu family regret treating you the way they did. Chu Liuxiang said to him with a resolute look in her gaze. Yuan sighed and said, as much as I want to make the Yu family suffer for what they have done, I cannot bear to hurt Yu Rou, who is also part of the Yu family, and I am afraid that hurting her family will also hurt her. I don't think Yu Rou will be affected, since she has already left the family. While she has the Yu family's surname, it doesn't mean that she will follow in their footstep. If you're really that worried, you can simply take Yu Rou into your faction. My faction? Yuan mumbled in a low voice. I don't have a faction. Then you should start one, at least I think you should start one. You have the capabilities and the resources to create one of the strongest factions in the world. If you create a faction, I will also join you, and with 2 spirit masters, I don't think we will have any competitions for a long time, long enough to reach the peak and solidify our foundations. Yuan turned silent to ponder, as he has never really thought about starting his own faction since that was akin to starting up his own sect in the cultivation world. Does he have what it takes to manage a faction? What if things don't work out? And what if it brings more trouble than good? Wouldn't it be easier if we all just joined an existing faction that already has its own foundation? Take the spiritual elites for example. I think they're a trustworthy bunch. Chu Liuxiang shook her head on the pillow and said, I don't know much about the spiritual elites or the 6 spiritual families operates, and I believe you when you say that they are trustworthy, but I still think that it would be for the best if you created your own faction. This way you don't have to worry about any restrictions in the future, and you can do everything at your own pace. If you join another faction, you will never fully be able to spread your wings, at least that's what I believe. Alright, give me some time to think about all of this since it's not something I can rush. Take all the time you need, Brother Yuan, since I will always be by your side now. Chu Liuxiang giggled in a low volume. Eventually, Chu Liuxiang started getting sleepy, but before she closed her eyes, she made sure to snuggle herself closer to Yuan. Yuan could feel her soft body clinging to him, and he could smell the soothing fragrance coming from her silky brown hair, but he didn't think too much of it and also went to sleep as he was used to sleeping with her in such a manner back in the orphanage. The 2 of them quickly fell asleep, and once Meishio could no longer hear them talk, she also decided to finally go to sleep. The following morning, Yuan woke up with a somewhat heavy feeling on his body, and it felt like something was restricting his body. His heart immediately began beating nervously since his initial thought was that his body had suddenly returned to being crippled. However, he quickly realized that was not the case, and the reason for this heavy feeling was Chu Liuxiang, who had somehow managed to climb on top of his body, and she still appeared to be asleep. A relieved smile appeared on Yuan's face when he recalls how Chu Liuxiang has bad sleeping habits and would always toss around in bed. How am I supposed to get out of this without waking her up? Yuan sighed inwardly. Chu Liuxiang was not only lying on top of his body, but she was also hugging his body like a koala hugging a tree. Then Yuan noticed something soft pressing against his chest, and he realized that it was caused by Chu Liuxiang's breasts. However, they felt softer than when he accidentally touched Maifeng's breasts, who was wearing her undergarments at that time. Indeed, Chu Liuxiang wasn't wearing any undergarments as of this moment since she didn't have her luggage, and she would rather not wear anything than reusing her old ones, but it was not as though she wasn't offered some by Meishio. But for some reason, Chu Liuxiang refused Meixia's offer and decided to sleep without any undergarments. Yuan eventually got Chu Liuxiang off his body, and to his surprise it didn't wake her up. Alright. She's also quite the heavy sleeper. Yuan then recalled this detail. He left the bedroom shortly after, and he noticed that Sebastian was already awake and sitting on the floor in the lotus position, seemingly cultivating. Yuan decided to not bother him and approached the bathroom, but before he could walk 2 steps, Sebastian opened his eyes and turned to look at Yuan. "Young Master Yuan, if you don't mind, can you spare me some of your time? After you come out of the bathroom, of course." "Sure," he casually nodded, thinking that this probably had something to do with Chu Liuxiang. After washing his face and brushing his teeth, Yuan came back outside and Sebastian was already standing at the door. "Let's talk outside, shall we?" Yuan nodded and followed him outside after changing out of his pajamas and wearing his mask. Chapter 555. You are the problem? Once they were outside, Sebastian tilted his head to look at the clear blue sky for a silent minute before turning to look at Yuan. Sensing Yuan's nervousness, Sebastian showed a friendly smile and said, "There's no need to be so tense. I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" Yuan raised his eyebrows. "For accepting the young lady despite being separated for so long. I don't know how much she told you about the Chu family, but she lived a very reclusive and boring life there with barely any interactions. Besides her family, myself, and a few other instructors, the young lady doesn't have any friends, so she was always bored and she would always complain to me. Of course, there isn't anything I could do for her except listen to her complaints. This is my first time seeing the young lady so excited and blissful, and I am thanking you for that." "You don't have to thank me for that. I have known Lulu ever since the orphanage and we were the closest thing to a family back then. No matter how much time has passed, I will always value her as such," Yuan said to him. Sebastian nodded and then he asked, "Do you have any plans for the future?" "That's a very vague question. I kept it vague on purpose since I don't know anything about you besides the fact that you're player Yuan and that you're the young lad's childhood friend. What do you see yourself doing in the future? Are you going to continue living like this, doing whatever you please, or do you intend on doing something big like standing at the top of the world? Maybe you will even start a family and settle down somewhere in the world." "I can't tell you anything since I don't know what I want to do myself. I have only recently regained my ability to move, so not long ago, I didn't even have the luxury of deciding what I want to do, since there's literally nothing I can do in that state." "Fair enough." Sebastian nodded. "Then allow me to ask you this. Where do you see yourself with the young lady in the future? With Lulu? I hope we can continue being close to each other, I guess, but that will also depend on what she wants to do with her life." Sebastian remained silent for a moment before speaking. "You see, the young lady is a very important individual within the Chu family, and being one of the most powerful families in the world, the young lady will definitely become a grand figure in the world. The masters, her parents haven't decided on what they want to do with her after she finished her training, hence why they allowed her to do as she pleases for now. However, once they have come to a conclusion, they will ask her to return to the family. Maybe they will make her take over the family, or maybe they will send her to another family through marriage. We won't know until that day comes. However, regardless of what her parents want the young lady to do, there will be a problem. And that problem is you, young Master Yuan." Why would I be a problem?" Yuan asked as he was truly puzzled. "You're too important to the young lady. I dare even say that you're more important to the young lady than the Chu family is to her, so if she has to pick between you or the family, she will most definitely pick you. That is what I believe after seeing you two together for less than a day." Sebastian's words confused Yuan even further. Why does she have to pick between me and her family? As ID said, the young lad's freedom is only temporary. Once she has to return to the family, she will most likely lose that freedom again and return to being alone or live with another family, which means that she will no longer be able to see you again, and the young lady won't accept that, so she might decide to leave the family, which will cause many problems. Yuan was speechless. Why must a family become more complicated the more powerful they become? Why would they take away Chu Liuxiang's freedom? Why won't she be able to see him again? He cannot see how this would benefit anyone. Sebastian then continued, "Therefore, you must make a decision. If you want to stay with the young lady, then you should prepare yourself for the future and become more influential so that you can affect even the Chu family. You may be a little famous right now, but it's not nearly enough to truly affect the world and those that stand at the top. However, if you don't intend on doing that, then I suggest you separate from the young lady as soon as possible so that neither of you gets hurt, especially since the longer you're together, the more difficult it will be for you two when you have to separate. You must also understand that I am not threatening you right now, young Master Yuan. In fact, I am on the young lattice side, as I have been ever since I was assigned to take care of her. I just want you to be aware of the young lattice situation, and I don't want her to experience any grievances. I have been with the Chu family for nearly my entire life, so I know how they operate very well. Although there is no doubt that they care deeply for the young lady, it is also a fact that she was adopted, so she isn't truly part of the Chu family. Even if they cannot benefit from her, they won't just throw her away, as they have sacrificed too many resources for her. After a moment of silence, Yuan said, I don't know what to say or think of this information. Don't worry, you have plenty of time to think and come to a conclusion, but don't take too long since the Chu family is sometimes very unpredictable. Anyways, it was nice talking with you, young Master Yuan. If you have any questions, I will always be available, Sebastian said to him. Chapter 556, Chu Liuxiang's Ambitions. Shortly after Yuan and Sebastian left the Immortal Caves to talk, Meishio woke up from her sleep to find Chu Liuxiang sleeping in a weird position and Yuan gone. She didn't think too much of it and went outside, but neither Yuan nor Sebastian was around. She wondered where they went as she entered the bathroom to clean her face. And as Meishio left the bathroom, Chu Liuxiang was coming out of the bedroom with a sleepy expression on her face. Where's brother Yuan? Chu Liuxiang asked. I don't know. He was gone by the time I woke up. Is that so? Chu Liuxiang then entered the bathroom to clean her face. Once she came out of the bathroom, she saw Meishio sitting at the table alone, and after pondering for a second, she decided to sit with her. Meishio quickly noticed Chu Liuxiang staring at her, mostly because Chu Liuxiang didn't try to hide the fact. Is there something on my face? Meishio asked her. No, I was just thinking that you're very pretty. To her surprise, Chu Liuxiang actually praised her appearance. Thank you. Meishio felt a little awkward after hearing Chu Liuxiang's praises. Hey, I have a question. What do you think of brother Yuan? Chu Liuxiang suddenly asked her. What do you mean? Meishio raised her eyebrows slightly. I'm asking what you think of brother Yuan as a man. Are you interested in him? Or are you already in love with him? I have watched you for an entire day, but I cannot figure it out. Surely, you must have some feelings for him since you have been living with him for so long, and brother Yuan is a very charming man, in his own way. Chu Liuxiang blatantly asked Meishio if she loved Yuan. And sure enough, Meishio was left speechless by such a question. But before she could even respond, Chu Liuxiang continued, Actually, you don't have to tell me since it won't really change my decision. Your decision? Meishio asked out of curiosity. My decision to stay with brother Yuan for the rest of my life as his wife. I wasn't sure about my feelings at first, but after seeing him again, I am certain that I love him, so I want to be with him, even if I have to leave the Chu family. Meixia's eyes' visibility widened after hearing Chu Liuxiang's declaration of love for Yuan, but she was more surprised that Chu Liuxiang had the courage to say such words out loud than the words themselves. After all, anyone could tell that Chu Liuxiang had intimate feelings for Yuan just by how she acted when around him. Seeing Meixia's reaction, Chu Liuxiang smiled and said, Don't worry, it's not like I am declaring war or anything like that by telling you that I love brother Yuan. I just wanted to clear your doubts since you seem to question my feelings for him. Meishio opened her mouth, but no words came out as she wasn't sure how she should respond to Chu Liuxiang's words. Obviously, she had some feelings for Yuan, but she wasn't as bold as Chu Liuxiang to announce that out loud. I want 2 children with brother Yuan, no matter if they are a boy or a girl. That is my dream, or should I say dreams. And I hope to achieve one of these dreams before I have to return to my family. Meixia's jaw dropped a little after hearing her words. Does Chu Liuxiang plan on getting pregnant before she returns to the Chu family? Aren't you a little too young for a child? Meishio couldn't help but ask. Although she didn't know Chu Liuxiang's age, they looked to be around the same age. Too young? Based on what? I am already an adult, so why must I pointlessly wait to conceive when I am already prepared to have children? In fact, I have heard from others that it's normal for girls at my age to already have their own family in this day and age. Meishio was speechless. While it is true that there are many girls out there that have already started their own family at the age of 18, with some being even younger, she still felt that having a child at such a young age would be too much responsibility. Listen here, Meishu. Brother Yuan is a very charming young man with unlimited potential, and I have no doubt that there will be a lot of competition in the future, so it's only logical to strike while the iron is hot. Even if he decides to get another wife in the future, at least I already have a spot in his heart. Wait, you don't mind sharing him with others? Meishu was truly speechless now. Is that why Chu Liuxiang doesn't care if she loved Yuan or not? And if someone asked her, she would definitely prefer having the man she loved all to herself. Well, my father has many wives, so I am used to it, and they all seem pretty happy together. Furthermore, it's not uncommon for powerful men to have many wives. Honestly, I don't care as long as I have a place in his heart. Chu Liuxiang said in a calm and clear voice. By now, Yuan and Sebastian had been away for over an hour. Suddenly, the door opened, and both Yuan and Sebastian returned to the Immortal caves with suitcases by their side. After their talk, Yuan decided to go with Sebastian to get their luggage since he knew his way around the place much better than Sebastian. Good morning, brother Yuan. You too, Sebastian. Chu Liuxiang stood up and left the table after seeing their return. Good morning, young lady, Sebastian said to her. You're awake already? I thought you would still be asleep since you have never been good with waking up in the morning. Yuan chuckled. That was years ago, she quickly said. Meanwhile, Meishu silently watched Chu Liuxiang acting very intimately around Yuan, but Chu Liuxiang no longer looked as innocent as before since Meishu is now aware of Chu Liuxiang's grand ambitions. Chapter 557, Unable to Focus. After putting their luggage away, Chu Liuxiang and Meishu changed out of their pajamas before making their way to the restaurant for breakfast. Once breakfast was done, Chu Liuxiang asked, Brother Yuan, what are you going to do today? I am going to practice with my sword at the training building. Honestly, that's pretty much all we do here. I am sorry if it's a little boring, he said. It's fine. I don't mind it. After they rested a little after breakfast, they began making their way to the training building. I will see you later, Meishu said to Yuan before making her way to the 4th floor. Meanwhile, Yuan entered the gymnasium on the 1st floor and did some warm-up with the sword. Can I see that sword? Chu Liuxiang asked him. Yuan handed the wooden sword to her. Oh, it's much heavier than it looks. There's metal in the center so it feels like a real sword. Chu Liuxiang began swinging the sword around effortlessly, but her technique wasn't the best. In fact, one could even call them choppy and amateurish, and anyone watching could tell that she was a complete beginner with the sword. What kind of training do you do? Yuan asked her out of curiosity. Mostly how to control my spiritual energy. Like this. Chu Liuxiang held the sword in front of her for a moment before letting the handle go. However, to Yuan's surprise, the sword didn't fall to the ground and hovered in the air. This is chi manipulation? Yuan could tell that Chu Liuxiang was controlling the sword with her spiritual energy so that it wouldn't fall, and this technique greatly resembled chi manipulation that can only be used by spirit grandmasters in. Chi manipulation? It's a technique from my family, but they call it spiritual control. Chu Liuxiang said. Does that mean you also know how to fly? Yuan couldn't help but ask. Fly? That's impossible, she said. Really? If you know chi manipulation, then you can control the spiritual energy around your body, allowing you to fly. I'm not sure, but I cannot control the spiritual energy around me, only my own spiritual energy. I can use it to move things from a distance and it can even deal significant damage, but that's pretty much all it can do. Flying is out of the question, she said. Then it's not chi manipulation? Yuan mumbled to himself. Of course, there is also the chance that it's actually chi manipulation, but Chu Liuxiang hasn't reached that level yet. Brother Yuan, you're quite strong, right? Do you want to experience for yourself the technique's might? Don't worry, I will hold back. Sure. Yuan eagerly nodded. He then stood a few meters away from Chu Liuxiang like Shed instructed him before putting the sword in front of him in a defensive position. Are you ready? Chu Liuxiang asked him. I am. Hearing such words, Chu Liuxiang took a deep breath and gathered the spiritual energy in her body at her fists. Once she was ready, she threw a punch at Yuan, but her fist was nowhere near touching Yuan, as they were still a few meters away from each other. However, Yuan could feel something powerful and heavy slamming into his sword the next second, pushing him back many inches, nearly knocking him off his feet. Wow. And that was holding back. Yuan asked her afterward. Yes, I can destroy a boulder the size of a car if I used all of my strength, enough to kill someone, she said. Heavens! That's a terrifying technique. Yuan muttered in a dazed voice. It's very powerful, but it also consumes a lot of my spiritual energy, so I can only use it a couple of times before I exhaust my energy, she said. A few minutes later, Wang Ming entered the gymnasium, and the first thing he did was look for Yuan's figure. Once he found Yuan, who was speaking with Chu Liuxiang, he approached them. Hey Yuan, you ready for another spar today? Wang Ming asked him. Yes. Yuan nodded. Wang Ming then glanced at Chu Liuxiang for a moment, almost like he had something to say, but he didn't say anything to her in the end and returned his focus on Yuan. The two of them began their spar shortly after, and Chu Liuxiang would watch them fight each other a few meters away. Meanwhile, on the fourth floor, Meishio was warming up at the still targets. Are you okay, Feng? The instructor approached her and asked her in a concerned voice. You haven't hit the red a single time after shooting a dozen arrows, and you even missed a couple of shots. Even if you're just warming up, this isn't like you. If you're not feeling well, you should take the day off, maybe even get checked by a doctor. I am fine, instructor. My mind is just occupied by a few things and can't really focus, that's all. Meishio said, as she would keep thinking about her conversation with Chu Liuxiang this morning. If you cannot focus, you should put the bow down and meditate until you can clear your mind. The instructor advised her. I shall do that then. Thank you. Meishio placed her bow down and began meditating near the wall so that she doesn't obstruct the others. However, when she closed her eyes and tried to clear her mind, Chu Liuxiang's words would continue to resound inside her head. What do you think of Brother Yuan? I love Brother Yuan, and I wish to stay with him forever as his wife. I want 2 children with Brother Yuan, one of them before I have to return to the family. There will be many competitors in the future. I love Brother Yuan. I really love him. Why did you have to show up now? Meishio sighed in a low voice when she couldn't get rid of Chu Liuxiang's voice inside her head. Chapter 558, Senior Hong. After spending an hour trying to clear her head, Meishio finally managed to calm down, and she went to practice the bow to take her mind off everything else. At the end of the day, the instructor approached Meishio and said to her, Senior Hong said to give him a visit whenever you're ready for the bow. Oh, and he also wants you to bring along player Yuan if he's not busy. I will ask him later. Meishio nodded. Sometime later, Meishio returned to the first floor, where Yuan and Wang Ming had just finished their training for the day. Yuan, Senior Hong said that he'd like to see us. Meishio approached them. Is this about your bow? Yuan asked. Yes. All right. Let's give him a visit after we tidy up our appearances. See you tomorrow. Wang Ming said to Yuan before they left the training building and returned to the Immortal Caves to take a quick shower. Once they were prepared, Meishio and Yuan went to the Hong family's living quarters with Chu Liuxiang and Sebastian following them. However, they had to ask for directions since they have never been to the place before. After asking a few people, they finally arrived at the Hong family's main living quarters, and there appeared to be smoke coming from the back of the massive building. Welcome to the Hong family, esteemed guests. Master Hong is currently in the crafting hall. Allow me to bring you there. The guard there greeted them. They then followed the guard to the back of the area, where the smoke was coming from. Once they arrived and entered the building, they could see a half-naked old man with the upper part of his body that was very jacked and refined, completely naked and soaked in sweat. It was Senior Hong, and he was hammering away at the anvil. Ding, ding, ding. Every time he struck the hot iron on the anvil, the others would feel their hearts pop out of their chest a little. Welcome. Senior Hong stopped whatever he was doing when he noticed Yuan and the others. It's okay, we can wait until you're finished, Yuan said to him. Senior Hong laughed and said, Don't worry, I was just exercising. It's not like I was actually making anything. Exercising? Yuan raised his eyebrows. Anyways, give me a few minutes. As you can see, I am covered in sweat. Senior Hong then walked outside the building and into this small building that was literally a few steps away from the crafting building. After Senior Hong disappeared inside this small building, they could hear water splashing a couple of times before stopping. A few minutes later, Senior Hong left the small building with a fresh appearance. Follow me. Senior Hong then led them to another building that was about a minute away from the crafting area. This is the storage area. It's where I keep all of our equipment. Senior Hong said as he opened the locked doors before bringing them inside. Wow. Yuan muttered in a low voice shortly after stepping foot inside this building. Inside the building was a spacious room that was just like the gymnasium, but there were weapons everywhere. There were weapons stacked on shelves, weapons laying on the ground, and there were even weapons hanging on the walls. Our Hong family handles all of the faction's equipment since crafting is our expertise, and we get to hone our skills while we support the faction, so it's a win-win for us. Follow me. Senior Hong then led them to a secluded section in the building, and he said to Meishio, there are over 100 different types of bows here. Get a feel for each of them and let me know which one you like the best, and I will craft you a brand new one with your strength in mind. And judging by your skills at the competition, I would say that you're the type to wield a short bow that specializes in rapid fire, but you should still check out all of the bows before making a conclusion. Okay. Thank you. Meishio said to him before she went to look at the bows. Fellow Taoist Yuan, since you're here as well, why don't you also pick a weapon? You're mostly a sword user, right? We have plenty of them. Really? Yuan was delighted to hear this since he has been thinking about getting a sword but didn't know where. Yes. If you want, I can even craft you a custom sword. However, Yuan shook his head and said, just an ordinary sword is good enough. Thank you. All right. The swords are in Section A by the entrance. Let me lead you there. Thus, Yuan followed Senior Hong to the area holding the swords. Wow, Yuan was amazed by how many swords there were in this place. In fact, this is his first time seeing so many swords at once. Young lady, if you like, you can also pick a sword. Senior Hong didn't want her to feel left out and said, thank you, but I don't use swords, or any weapons for that matter. Senior Hong nodded and didn't say anything else. Yuan proceeded to pick up every sword to feel them in his grasp. Once he found the perfect sword that felt the best in his grasp, he showed it to Senior Hong. I want this sword. Senior Hong nodded without any hesitation. It may be an ordinary sword, but it's still a good sword nevertheless. Now that Yuan had a sword, they returned to Meixia's side. Take your time, Yuan said to her. Meishio nodded. Half an hour later, Meishio said to Senior Hong, I like the way this bow feels in my hand, but it's a little too light. Can you make me something heavier? In fact, due to her increased strength, every single bow that she has used up to this point was simply too light, and that isn't good in archery. In other words, Meishio has been at a disadvantage this entire time due to this setback and hasn't shown her real potential. Chapter 559. Too light, huh? That's not good. Although light bows are easier to handle, they won't be able to compare to heavier bows in terms of power and speed, just like how a sword shouldn't be too light, sacrificing power for control. I will need to conduct some tests to see how strong I should make the bow. Senior Hong said to Meishio. Okay. Follow me to the workshop. Yuan and the others followed him back to the crafting area, where Senior Hong retrieved a couple of dumbbells of different sizes. The lightest dumbbell is 100 kilos while the heaviest dumbbell is 500 kilos. Go ahead and try each of them. Meishio nodded and proceeded to pick up each of the dumbbells, starting with the lightest one. A few minutes later, Meishio placed the 500-kilo dumbbell down and said to Senior Hong, I still think they're a bit too light. Still too light? The heaviest dumbbell weighs over a ton, you know? Even I have trouble picking it up, and you're only a spirit warrior. Just how much innate strength do you possess? Senior Hong was speechless. After a moment of silence, he asked her, what is your limit? I don't know, but I have picked up a car with relative ease before, she calmly responded. A car? How big was the car? Just an ordinary sedan-type car. Heavens! These types of cars are usually around 1,500 kilos. And that is still too easy for you? I'm afraid that I won't be able to craft a bow that could handle your monstrous strength. Senior Hong shook his head in a defeated manner. He could have never imagined that Meishio would have such immense strength when her slim figure looked so fragile and weak. The following morning, Yuan would wake up to find his body restricted again, but to his surprise, it wasn't Chu Liuxiang that was restricting him. Instead, it was Meishio who was clinging to his body, and with her immense strength, it was pretty much impossible for Yuan to break free without doing so very forcefully, so he could only wait until Meishio wakes up. Chapter 560. An hour has passed since Yuan woke up from his sleep, but he hasn't been able to move, much less go anywhere because of Meishio, who was hugging his body with incredible strength. Fortunately, Yuan only had to wait a few more minutes before Meishio woke up and realized the situation. I am sorry. Meishio quickly jumped out of the bed when she realized that she had been hugging him while in her sleep. It's okay, Yuan said in a calm voice. How long have you been awake? Meishio couldn't help but ask him. I don't know, but I've been awake for a bit now, he responded. Why didn't you wake me up if that was the case? You were sleeping very peacefully, and I couldn't tell myself to wake you up in that state. Meishiu blushed after hearing his words. Does this mean he has been watching my sleeping face this entire time? She wondered inwardly. Anyways, now that you're awake, I can finally use the bathroom, Yuan said as he got off the bed and went to the bathroom. Not bad, Meishiu. Looks like you're finally showing your true self. Chu Liuxiang's voice suddenly resounded, causing Meishiu to look at her. Chu Liuxiang? It's not like that. Meishiu refuted in a low voice. Who are you trying to fool? As someone who is deeply in love with brother Yuan, I can tell when another girl is also in love with him. You're not benefiting anybody by lying to yourself. Chapter 561. Once the instructor showed Yuan how to hold the staff, he swung the staff around in a slow but precise manner, allowing Yuan to see every single one of his movements more clearly. A few minutes later, the instructor stopped his movements and turned to look at Yuan before handing him the staff. Here. I showed a little more than I was supposed to, but I wanted to give you a grasp of what it means to wield a staff. After Yuan accepted the staff, the instructor went to grab another one for himself. Am I holding this properly? Yuan asked. Yes, that's perfect. Now let's start with the basic movements. The instructor then executed a single strike with the staff before freezing in that position. Yuan followed his movements and executed the same strike with perfection. Of course, it was only a basic movement, so it wasn't that impressive. Here's a follow-up. The instructor resumed his movements and swung the staff again. Yuan followed. The two of them would continue in this manner until they executed most of the basic movements. Now try to do it all at once without any long pauses, the instructor said to him. Chapter 562. After eating dinner, Yuan retired to his bedroom with the other two ladies. Good night, brother Yuan, Chu Liuxiang said to him after snuggling close to him. Meanwhile, Meishiu took a seat a few meters in front of the bed and started cultivating. Although she was already a spirit warrior and ahead of the majority of people in the world, she didn't want to lose to Chu Liuxiang, who was a spirit master. Yuan fell asleep shortly after lying on the bed as he was incredibly tired from training today. More so than usual since he wasn't used to training with polearms. After falling asleep, Yuan found himself in his dream once again, but he was surrounded by a thick fog that blocked all of his vision. What is it this time? Yuan's initial thought was that it was something caused by the handsome man that would often appear in his dreams. But there was no response. Whoosh. Suddenly, Yuan felt something fly past his head, but it was too fast for him to see what that thing was. Then he felt something dripping down his face. Yuan subconsciously lifted his hand to wipe his face, and to his surprise he was bleeding. Whatever just flew past his head had scratched his face deep enough to bleed. And before he could make sense of what happened, the fog began clearing away, revealing to Yuan his surroundings. It was at this moment Yuan woke up from his dream. What was that all about? Yuan wondered to himself, as the dream was too different from his usual dreams, and even the handsome man felt like a different person. Chapter 563. After waking up from his strange dream, Yuan went to wash his face before going outside to get some fresh air, and he wondered if had been a general in his past life. That man in my dream said that I was his reincarnation, but from what I have seen so far, he appeared to live inside a cultivation world. Does this mean there exists a cultivation world out there somewhere in the universe? Many minutes later, Yuan returned inside the Immortal caves, and everyone there was already awake and prepared to grab some breakfast. Where did you go, brother Yuan? Chu Liuxiang asked him. I was right outside the caves getting some fresh air, he said. They left the Immortal caves shortly after to get breakfast. After eating breakfast, they made their way to the training building, where Yuan would spend another day on the third floor training with the spear. As for Meishiu, she had spent most of her time in the outdoor training area. Instructor, can I train with you again today? Yuan approached the bulky man who showed a bittersweet smile on his face after hearing Yuan's request. After all, he didn't want to lose again before so many disciples, and had already lost plenty of face from yesterday's loss. However, as though the heavens were on the instructor's side, before he could open his mouth to speak, someone suddenly approached them and said, I could spar with you if you'd like. His movements weren't this quick and sharp yesterday. It's almost like I am watching an entirely different person than yesterday. What kind of training did he undergo yesterday? How can someone improve so drastically in less than a day? The instructor cried inwardly. Chapter 564. Sebastian, what do you think of brother Yuan? Chu Liuxiang asked him as they watched Yuan spar with Shi Lang. I think he's a very talented young man, perhaps even the most talented person I have ever seen. I dare say that even the top geniuses from the Chu family wouldn't be able to match him, he calmly responded. Then do you think my parents would accept someone like him? Chu Liuxiang asked, her intentions clear with that question. Sebastian pondered for a moment before speaking. Young lady, you should know very well the master's personality. Talent alone won't be enough to impress them. He'll need more than that to receive their recognition. Is that so? Chu Liuxiang mumbled. Sometime later, the crowd surrounding Yuan and Shi Lang suddenly erupted with cheering and excitement. He won. Player Yuan actually managed to defeat Shi Lang. Heavens! What was that technique at the end? I have never seen anything like that before. In the middle of the circle, Shi Lang was sitting on the floor with a look of disbelief on his face. What kind of technique was that just now? Shi Lang asked Yuan. It doesn't have a name, he said. After all, had learned the technique from watching the handsome man his dream. I see. Anyways, it was a great fight. I didn't actually expect to lose if I am being completely honest. Shi Lang extended his hand for a handshake. Yuan accepted his hand and said, likewise, I enjoyed the spar. Sometime later, the instructor approached Yuan and said, you must have practiced a lot even after you went home. Training? Yuan raised his eyebrows, but he didn't respond to that as he figured that it would be for the better. How about another round? I still have a lot of energy. Shi Lang asked Yuan a moment later. The thousands of spectators cheered for the contestants afterward. Wow, is that really player Yuan? This is my first time seeing him. He's also wearing a mask out here? Damn it. I wanted to see his face at the very least. Chapter 565. After introducing the contestants, a servant approached the stage while carrying a small box. This is what will decide your matchups. Whoever holds the same numbers will be fighting that round. That is all. A moment later, the contestants picked their number. Yuan looked at the paper in his hands. Number 1 inch, the matches will be in the order of the number, so whoever has number 1 will be the first to fight, said the announcer on the stage. I am first, Yuan said. The announcer nodded and looked at the other 7. Who has the other number 1? Iche? Someone there sighed as he raised his hand into the air. It's me, Wang Ming said in a defeated voice. He turned to look at Yuan and smiled bitterly. I didn't expect to lose on the first round. What bad luck. Everyone but the fighters for the first round please leave the stage, the announcer said. Very quickly, everyone but Wang Ming and Yuan left the stage. What about our weapons? Yuan asked. Chapter 566. Ding. Wang Bingbing swung her sword at Hong Xiuquan, but Hong Xiuquan used his gauntlets to protect himself, using it as a shield. After defending the attack, Hong Xiuquan used his other hand to throw a powerful punch at Wang Bingbing, who elegantly twisted her body to dodge it. Wow, it's like wielding 2 weapons at once, Yuan mumbled. Although he's at a disadvantage due to his very limited range, he more than makes up for it since that allows him to defend and attack at the same time. Wang Ming said. Doesn't it still hurt when he defends? Even though he has steel gloves, the impact should still hurt him quite a bit. Yuan asked. Yes, but the gauntlets aren't something you just put on and use like a sword or other weapons. It requires the wielder to train their body if they want to use it efficiently. Hong Xiuquan had to temper his body, mostly his arms, to extreme lengths, so that he wouldn't have a broken arm every time he defends. He has bathed in treasures since he was young, not to mention the strenuous physical training he does almost every day, allowing his arms and bones to become as durable as steel. Body tempering, huh? I wonder how they temper their body. Is it any different from what I did in? However, this would mean that treasures with spiritual energy really exist in this world. I should ask them later. Ding, ding, ding. Wang Bingbing and Hong Xiuquan fought fiercely for many minutes with Wang Bingbing trying to break Hong Xiuquan's defenses, while Hong Xiuquan tries to catch Wang Bingbing off guard with a counterattack, but neither of them was successful after many minutes of going back and forth. Compared to player Yuan and Wang Ming's battle, this is kind of boring, right? Chapter 567. Ding. Whoosh. Ding. Shi Lang continued his assault on Wu Zhao relentlessly, but Wu Zhao would always manage to block or deflect the attack. However, Wu Zhao was also unable to close their distance, much less reach Shi Lang to attack him. Ha! Shi Lang suddenly took a large step forward while thrusting his spear, taking Wu Zhao by surprise. Not bad. Wu Zhao twisted his body in an odd manner, barely dodging the strike. After dodging, Wu Zhao grabbed Shi Lang's spear with his bare hands, before pulling Shi Lang towards him. What incredible strength. Shi Lang struggled to retrieve his spear, but he also didn't want to let go of his spear. He couldn't, or that would spell the end for him. However, that meant Wu Zhao could finally reach him. Seeing that Shi Lang didn't let go of his spear, Wu Zhao immediately stepped forward and swung his fan at Shi Lang, who used his other hand to block the fan. However, Shi Lang didn't temper his body like Hong Xiuquan had, so his arm was immediately bruised by the strike. I'm sorry. Li Jinxi isn't very good at holding back. And she doesn't learn no matter how many times we tell you to do so. Senior Li sighed. Don't worry about it. This happens every time she fights someone, said Senior Shi. Well, they say pain is weakness leaving the body. Shi Murong was too reserved today. It was an embarrassment to watch. He also needs to be scolded afterward, said the head of the Shi family, Shi Murong's father. Chapter 568. Now that the first round of matches has concluded, there will be a 30-minute break. You may use this time to recover your strength, but you are not allowed to leave the area or consume medicine that speeds up your recovery. The announcer said to them. The contestants that won their match started to cultivate to recover as much energy as they can, but Yuan merely sat on the benches with Wang Ming sitting beside him. You're not going to cultivate? Wang Ming asked him. I don't really need to. Yuan said, feeling completely fine and overflowing with energy. You're really another breed, aren't you? Wang Ming shook his head with a bittersweet smile. There was another contestant that didn't bother to rest, and it was Li Jinxi, who barely exerted any strength to defeat her opponent, and she would silently stare in Yuan's direction. Noticing this, Yuan asked Wang Ming, she's staring at our direction. What do you think she wants from us? Wang Ming turned to look at Li Jinxi and chuckled, us? I think she only has you in her eyes at this moment. She's probably wondering if you'll be a challenge for her since she doesn't really have any rivals in the faction, and even the Grand Elders are no match for her. What? Even the Grand Elders cannot defeat her? Yuan was surprised to hear this. Li Jinxi may only be at the peak of Spirit Warrior, but her tremendous strength is on another level. In terms of experience and skills, the Grand Elders are definitely above her. However, in a fight, Li Jinxi's superior strength allows her to dominate everyone. But it's not like the Grand Elders cannot defeat her. If they fight 10 matches, Li Jinxi would probably win 6 to 7 of them. I see. Yuan nodded. I think she will be a worthy opponent for you, Yuan. You'll understand it once you stand on the same stage as her. Wang Ming chuckled. 30 minutes later, the announcer called the 4 contestants that won back onto the stage for another round of picking numbers. Yuan looked at his number after picking it. 2-inch if you say so. Yuan nodded. Chapter 569. Are you two ready? The announcer asked Yuan and Hong Xiuquan. I am. They both responded simultaneously. Then let the fight begin. Once the fight started, Yuan slowly approached Hong Xiuquan, who was standing still in a defensive position. His intentions were clear. He was going to repeat what he did during his fight with Wang Bingbing. So he's going to defend and try to counterattack, huh? Let's see your limits. Yuan accepted his challenge and dashed at Hong Xiuquan with his sword raised. However, midway through his swing, Hong Xiuquan, who was prepared to block the attack, suddenly shouted with his eyes wide, I surrender. Yuan immediately halted his movements, stopping his sword an inch away from Hong Xiuquan. Huh? Yuan doubted what had just heard. Did Hong Xiuquan just surrender? The spectators were also dumbfounded by Hong Xiuquan's sudden surrender. They didn't even fight. Why would he suddenly surrender? Young Master Hong, did you just surrender? The announcer asked Hong Xiuquan for confirmation. Yes, I surrender. Hong Xiuquan said in a nonchalant voice as he removed his gauntlets before leaving the stage, and everyone speechless. Why? Yuan couldn't help but ask him as he was looking forward to their fight. Hong Xiuquan stopped for a moment and turned to look at Yuan. He then said in a low voice, I lied. My arms are not in the condition to fight. However, neither Yuan nor Li Jinxi moved from their spot. A cold grin appeared on Li Jinxi's smile when she felt the force behind Yuan's attack, looking like she'd just found her perfect prey. Let's dance. She suddenly shouted, her voice filled with excitement. Chapter 570. Clang, clang, clang. Yuan and Li Jinxi continued to swing their large swords at each other for many minutes, but neither of them was using their full strength just yet, as they were gradually increasing their strength to match each other. Heavens! How is he defending against Li Jinxi's attacks head-on? Does he also have a unique physique that gives him tyrannical strength? The spectators were shocked to witness Yuan fighting Li Jinxi on equal terms, something none of them have seen before. Who do you think will win this fight? Senior Wang asked the other Grand Elders. It's hard to tell. While we know Li Jinxi's full strength, we don't really know Daoist Yuan's full potential. Senior, she said. That is indeed true. For example, I could have never predicted that he had the strength to fight Li Jinxi head-on. I wonder if he also has a divine body. Considering how many talents he already has, it's not that crazy of an idea. Just what is he made out of? He's the definition of a flawless entity created by the heavens just to mess with everyone else. Meanwhile, on the stage, Li Jinxi started laughing. Finally! I have been waiting for someone like you. Someone that I can fight to my heart's content without worrying that you die in a single hit. Clang. Yuan was pushed back a full meter when Li Jinxi started fighting for real. What a heavy strike. Yuan cried inwardly, his entire arm shaking afterward, feeling like head just struck an immovable mountain. What should I do? I am a little behind in terms of raw strength. Yuan pondered as he looked at Li Jinxi, who was glaring at him like a tiger before its prey. What are you waiting for? Are you too afraid to continue? I can tell that you're weaker than me in terms of strength. Li Jinxi said to him. Yuan remained silent. There was a good chance that his movement technique wouldn't work on her, who has very keen eyes and a fast reaction, not to mention her weird sword technique that allows her to change her sword's direction at will. Meanwhile, the doctors went to check on Li Jinxi's condition, who was only knocked unconscious with a couple of minor injuries. Young Master Yuan, do you have any words to say? The announcer handed Yuan a microphone. Yuan subconsciously accepted the microphone, but he had nothing in mind. Chapter 571. Oh, thank you for letting me fight here today. It was a wonderful experience. Yuan said to the microphone before handing it back to the announcer and walking off the stage. Yuan, what kind of technique was that? I have never seen anyone dominate Li Jinxi in such a manner before. Wang Ming approached him with a look of disbelief on his face. Technique? That wasn't a technique. At least I don't think so. Yuan said. In fact, even he doesn't know what that power was. It came suddenly and disappeared as quickly. And even though it gave him incredible strength, Yuan regretted that he wouldn't be able to fight Li Jinxi properly. Is there anyone out there that can push me to my limits? Yuan sighed inwardly. At this rate, he will have to play if he wants to fight any worthy opponents. After the tournament, Yuan regrouped with the others. Congratulations, brother Yuan. You were very handsome on the stage. Chu Liuxiang said to him. Thank you. Yuan nodded. Daoist Yuan, what was that golden aura around you? It felt kind of similar to Li Jinxi's technique at the end. Senior Li asked him. Sorry, but I don't know. Yuan shook his head. The Grand Elders didn't say anything else as they believed that Yuan wanted to keep his secrets to himself, which was a normal thing to do. Regardless, it was refreshing to see Li Jinxi being on the receiving end of the beatdown since she's usually the one beating her opponents. Senior Li laughed out loud despite talking about his own granddaughter. The dream ended with that sentence and Yuan woke up the next moment. Tribulation. How am I supposed to prepare myself for something I know nothing about? That's impossible. Yuan sighed to himself. Chapter 572. After waking up, Yuan quietly left the bedroom and went outside the Immortal caves, but it was still completely dark outside. Clearly he had woken up earlier than usual. He then walked to the small pavilion located right next to the Immortal caves and took a seat underneath it. Just who am I? He mumbled in a low voice. Although he has pondered about his purpose in life many times throughout his life, he has never once questioned his identity. However, ever since he started having these dreams, he found himself questioning his identity more and more often. Who are my parents? Why did they abandon me? Am I really the reincarnation of a powerful cultivator? Or am I merely going crazy? Yuan sat underneath this pavilion for an unknown amount of time, silently pondering about his own identity and his reason for existing. Eventually the sun began rising. Ding! When the sun just peeked over the horizon, Yuan heard a beautiful and familiar-sounding noise coming from somewhere not too far away from him, causing him to snap out of his daze. This sound? Someone is playing the zither? Yuan subconsciously stood up and began following the direction of the sound. After walking for a few minutes, he arrived in a secluded area behind the Immortal caves, where a young woman was sitting on top of a large boulder playing with a wooden zither on her lap, her eyes completely closed. After a moment of silence, she said, "About that," she pointed at her closed eyes and said, "I don't want to scare you, but I lost my vision shortly after I started playing the zither, and I was born with perfect vision." "What?" Yuan muttered in a dazed manner. Chapter 573. You sound surprised, the young woman said after hearing his dazed mumble. And she continued, "Don't you also play the zither? Did nothing happen to you? As far as I am aware, everyone that plays the zither has encountered misfortune that ruined their lives one way or another." After a long moment, Yuan said, I learned to play the zither inside where such a curse doesn't exist. In fact, this is my first time playing with the zither in this world." The young woman covered her mouth in a shocked manner. Why didn't you say so before I handed you the zither? And why did you accept it? Now you'll also be met with misfortune." The young woman said to him in a worried voice, as she felt responsible for handing him the zither. Yuan chuckled and said, "You don't have to worry about me. I don't think playing a single song will affect me. Furthermore, he is already afflicted with many powerful curses, so having another one won't really matter to him. If you don't mind me asking, why are you still playing the zither despite the curse that took away your vision?" Yuan asked her afterward. "It's simple. I love the zither too much to let it go. It can take away my vision, but as long as I get to continue playing the zither, I don't mind some sacrifices," she responded in a calm voice. Yuan was left speechless by her words. He has never seen anyone so dedicated and passionate about an instrument before. If he was in her shoes, he would gladly give up playing instruments for his vision back. After a moment of silence, he asked, "Then can you tell me a little more about the curse? You said that you lost your vision shortly after playing the zither. How did it happen?" Chapter 574. Azure? Is that your nickname? Yuan asked her, as it was a weird name to have for someone part of the Wang family. Azure chuckled like a fairy before speaking, "No, that's my real name. I belong to the Wang family, but I do not share the same blood as them. In other words, I was adopted, and Azure was what the kids at the orphanage would call me, so I stuck to it." "She's also adopted?" Yuan's mouth opened a little from surprise. This is the first time that he can relate to someone so well. Not only were they both orphans, but both of them became sick out of the blue and without any logical explanation, not to mention that they also played the zither. It was almost as if Yuan was standing in front of a mirror right now. "Anyways, I have to go now. It was nice speaking with you, Yuan. If you are free in the future, let's play the zither together. I don't normally play outside, but since you're here, I will come outside more often." "Okay." Yuan immediately nodded. "How about tomorrow?" she then asked. "Same time?" Yuan asked. "Same time." "Then it's a promise. See you tomorrow." Azure then picked up her zither and left the place shortly after, but she didn't forget to wave at Yuan before she left. "Is this the sword technique used by Wang Ming during our first fight? So it was called Sword of Dominance, huh? What a domineering name. Very fitting for such a powerful strike." Yuan looked at the technique while trying his best to not accidentally learn them as he does in Chapter 575. Are these techniques too lackluster, or am I simply too spoiled by the techniques in? Despite looking through all of the techniques, Yuan didn't find any interest in them. "Have you found a suitable technique, Taoist Yuan?" the guard asked him when Yuan returned to him. "No," he shook his head. "Is there something wrong with the techniques?" The guard raised his eyebrows. "Not really. I'm just not interested in them." "That's unfortunate. I guess they are too weak compared to Taoist Yuan's techniques. If you ever change your mind, you can come back here at any time." "Thank you." After spending about half an hour inside the pagoda, Yuan left the place empty-handed. "You're out already? That was quicker than I'd anticipated," Chu Liuxiang said when he returned. "Chem? Where's your cultivation technique?" Meishio asked him. "I didn't pick a technique, mostly because I already have more powerful techniques," he said. "That makes sense. I doubt you'll be able to find a cultivation technique more powerful than divine rank in this world." Yuan shook his head and said, "I don't think the ranks are an issue since Flying Dagger is only a mortal rank technique. I guess I just don't have any need for them, and there's no point in me learning them if I am not going to use them. What are we going to do now? Meishio then asked. Let's just go home and relax for today. I have an appointment with Li Jinxi tomorrow, and I have a feeling that I will need all the energy I can spare, he said. Chapter 576. HAA. Bang. The ground shook as Li Jinxi struck the ground with her great sword, creating a large crack in the earth, but she immediately pulled it back out to defend against Yuan's attack. Dong. Li Jinxi was sent flying for a few meters before stabilizing herself. Once she stabilized herself, she immediately rushed at Yuan again. How long are they going to keep this up? It's already been 3 hours since they started fighting. Wang Ming suddenly muttered. I think the better question is how much stamina do they have to continuously go at each other in such an aggressive fashion for so long without any breaks? I would have collapsed from exhaustion long ago. Wang Bingbing said. Ridiculous strength requires a ridiculous amount of stamina to back up that strength, so it's not unnatural for them to have so much stamina, Senior Li said. It's no wonder why she wasn't satisfied after the competition when their match only lasted for a couple of minutes. Wang Ming said. After fighting for another 2 hours, Yuan dropped his sword and said, Stop. I give up. I am too exhausted to continue. He then collapsed onto the ground in a similar manner and began gasping for air. Li Jinxi stopped moving and stood there with her entire body covered in sweat, looking like someone had poured a few buckets of water on her body recently. She then stabbed her sword into the ground before falling onto her buttocks. Wow. Yuan actually lost to Li Jinxi? Wang Ming mumbled in a dazed voice. After all, how can a blind man move around without any support, much less fight with the powerful cultivators? That didn't make any sense. Chapter 577. Why you can't be blind? You're definitely joking with me. Li Jinxi said to him after snapping out of her daze, refusing to believe that she'd been fighting with a blind man this entire time. I am serious, Yuan said. He then opened his eyelids with his hands, revealing his blank eyes that lacked any light to her. Li Jinxi covered her mouth and mumbled, Tidan how? How are you moving around like you can see? Nobody would believe that you're blind with how you move around and fight. I can use divine sense, allowing me to see things around me, but I can only see a few meters away from me. However, despite the limited range, I can see things clearer than others, he said. Divine sense? I think I have heard of that before. To think you can use such a technique in this world as well. You're really something else. If word gets out that Yuan is actually blind, who knows how they will react? Li Jinxi thought to herself. After a moment of silence, Li Jinxi spoke, Hey, you're interested in body tempering, right? Do you want to try it? I'm asking if you want to try tempering your body. I always have some medicine and herbs prepared. We can do it right now if you wish. Right now? Yuan nodded and said, Of course, and I'd like to visit the Hong family after looking at the treasures. The Hong family? May I ask what business you have with them? Perhaps I can help you. It's about getting medicine to temper my body. Although I would like to start tempering my body, I don't know where to acquire the medicine to do so, and Li Jinxi told me to visit the Hong family, he explained. Chapter 578. Medicine, huh? I understand. If that's the case, there isn't anything my Li family can do for you, as the Hong family handles most of the medicine in the Jaded Garden. Senior Li said. Wow, they must have a lot of medicine if they supply the entire faction. Yuan said in a surprised voice. After all, they are the ones that require the most medicine because of people like Hong Xiuquan, who tempers his body around the clock almost daily. Senior Li laughed. Anyways, follow me. I will show you some of our Li family's treasures. Senior Li then led Yuan and everyone to another room. Please wait for a minute while I retrieve the treasures. Senior Li said before leaving them alone in the room. Even if Senior Li trusted Yuan and greatly valued his presence, there was no way that he'd bring someone that isn't part of their family to their storage area where they keep all of their treasures. Yuan patiently waited for Senior Li's return, his anticipation high. About 15 minutes later, Senior Li returned with 3 boxes in his grasp. He placed them on the table before Yuan and the others. This is the first treasure. Senior Li opened the first box, revealing a somewhat dried-up ginseng inside. This is a treasure? Yuan raised his eyebrows. It was an honor. Senior Li smiled. Chapter 579. By the way, I forgot to ask, but how do you use the treasures? Yuan asked Senior Li after he returned from putting away the treasures. Well, you can consume the ginseng or use it to make medicine. As for the jade slip, you simply absorb the spiritual energy within, he said. I see. Sometime later, Yuan and the others left the Li family's living quarters. Li Jinxi showed them the way to the Hong family. We also need to restock our medicine. Senior Li said to her. I understand. Thus, Li Jinxi led them to the Hong family. Ichem? Daoist Yuan? What brings you to the Hong family? Senior Hong asked him, feeling pleasantly surprised by his presence. Hello. I'd like to temper my body, but I don't know where to get the medicine required for it, and the Li family recommended that I speak with your family. Yuan said. I see. You came at the perfect time. Our family is currently harvesting this month's medicine supply, Senior Hong said. Harvesting? Yuan raised his eyebrows. So you grow your own medicine? Yes. Follow me. Senior Hong then led Yuan and the others to a few miles behind their living quarters, where a large medicine farm was located. Wow. Yuan mumbled, feeling awed from the medicine farm that stretched to the horizon. Every month, we harvest around 100 kilos of medicine from this place. Senior Hong said. Chapter 580. After resting for a bit inside the Immortal Caves, Yuan and the others went to get dinner. Once dinner was finished, Yuan went to take a bath, and he decided to try tempering his body with the medicine head received from the Hong family. However, during his tempering, someone opened the door and entered the bathroom. Knowing that it wasn't a stranger, Yuan didn't panic this time. However, he was still surprised to see Chu Liuxiang entering the bathroom with nothing but a towel around her body. Can I take a bath with you, brother Yuan? She asked him. I don't really mind, but the water is, he said. Before Yuan could even finish his sentence, Chu Liuxiang removed her towel and tossed it to the side before joining the bathtub with him. Of course, the bathtub in the Immortal Caves wasn't anywhere close to the size of the one in Li Jinxi's bathroom, so it was a little cramped in the bathtub with Chu Liuxiang's smooth skin rubbing against Yuan's body. Once the both of them were comfortable, they would sit there in awkward silence. We should do this more often, Chu Liuxiang suddenly said. I wouldn't mind that if we had a bigger bathtub. Yuan chuckled. After another moment of silence, Chu Liuxiang asked, Brother Yuan, have you ever considered starting your own family? So you refuse to start a family? Because you are afraid of burdening them? I thought you were strong enough to protect them. Yuan said to him. You know nothing, kid. Nobody is born at the peak, not even the ultimate genius. Despite where I ended, I wasn't always strong. Furthermore, I was too dedicated to cultivation, so even if I started a family, I wouldn't have any time for them. There's no point. The handsome man shook his head. Chapter 581. Oh. A gentle moan resounded beside him when Yuan awoke from his sleep, and to his surprise, his hands were grasping onto Chu Liuxiang's soft breasts. He quickly removed his hands, but as he prepared to apologize, he realized that Chu Liuxiang was deep asleep. Meanwhile, Meishio was cultivating beside the bed. Ever since she started cultivating at the Immortal Caves, Shed gained a level, reaching the second-level spirit warrior. Yuan silently left the bedroom and went to check the time. Once again, Head woke up early. He then went to the bathroom to wash his face before making his way outside, returning to the spot Head met Azure. And to his surprise, there was a figure sitting on the boulder with a zither resting beside her, and she was in the middle of cultivation. Yuan didn't want to bother her and sat down a few meters away from her, silently admiring Azure's elegant appearance. You're here early. Azure suddenly spoke a few minutes later, surprising Yuan. I woke up early again, he said. What a coincidence. I also woke up earlier than usual today. Maybe it's because I have been eager to play the zither with you, she chuckled gracefully. Anyways, since we're both here, why don't we play together now, she then said. Sure. But I don't have a zither. That's fine. Follow me. I have a spare one in my room. Yuan proceeded to follow Azure back to the Immortal Caves. Ding! Every few steps, Azure would pull a string on her zither, creating a single note that would echo in the place. If you're wondering why I am doing this, I am using the sound to guide me. Although I cannot see with my eyes, I can see with my zither. How does that work? That's good. Anyways, follow me. The bow is finished. A few minutes later, they arrived at the crafting area. Chapter 582. Give me a moment. Senior Hong went inside the building for a minute before returning with a cart that had a long wooden box resting on it. Here is your bao. Check it out. Senior Hong opened the box, revealing the beautiful black short bao inside. Meishio immediately went to pick up the bao, and to her surprise, was it many times heavier than any bao she has wielded before. However, it wasn't heavy enough to where she couldn't use it. She proceeded to move the bao around trying to get a feel for it. What do you think? If the weight isn't right, I can adjust it for you, but I can only make it lighter since that's already the heaviest I can make it. The weight is perfectly fine. Thank you for this bao. Meishio bowed to him in a respectful manner. Ah, don't even mention it. You deserve it. Go ahead, try shooting with it. Senior Hong handed her an arrow. Meishio took the arrow and proceeded to shoot it at a nearby tree. Even the string feels so different. It's more durable and pulling back on it gives me confidence for some reason. Meishio thought to herself. Whoosh. Meishio released the string once she got her aim, and the arrow flew in a straight line until it hit her desired location. However, nobody had a good solution in the end, and despite many speculations about the tribulation, they won't really know until it happens. Dyeing the entire world red. That sounds horrible. Yuan sighed as they returned to the Immortal Caves. Chapter 583. Brother Yuan, do you think the divination is true? Or is this merely a coincidence? Chu Liuxiang asked him when they returned. I want to believe it's merely a coincidence, but... A bittersweet smile appeared on his face when he recalled what the handsome man in his dream told him. I don't know. I just have a bad feeling about the situation. Chu Liuxiang shrugged and said, Well, even if there is a calamity, I'm sure you'll protect us, Brother Yuan. Yuan smiled and said, Of course. That is my #1 priority. The following day Yuan woke up early in the morning again. You've been waking up early lately, Yuan. Meishio suddenly stopped cultivating and said to him. I'm meeting up with a friend that I made recently, he said. The one who gave you the zither? Yes. I see. Have fun. Meishio returned to cultivating the next moment. After cleaning his face, Yuan grabbed his zither and went to meet up with Azure behind the Immortal Caves. Have you heard about the approaching calamity? Yuan suddenly asked Azure at the end of their session. The sky is red, young Master Yuan, Sebastian responded in a serious voice. What? Red? How is that possible? Yuan exclaimed. Chapter 584. I have never seen anything like this before. Sebastian continued speaking. Although there were times when the sky looked red, it never looked this red, like the sky is stained with blood. Brother Yuan, do you think this is caused by the calamity? Chu Liuxiang asked him in a worried voice. I don't know, but it's very possible. Let's hurry and find the Grand Elders. Yuan suggested. Thus, they began running to the Wang family's living quarters since they were the closest to the Immortal Caves. On their way there, they passed through many disciples, and all of them were staring at the sky with dazed looks on their faces. Heavens! It's almost like doomsday is upon us. One of them muttered out loud. This must be the calamity our ancestors warned us about. The calamity is coming. I don't want to die. At least wait until I find a cute girlfriend. Everyone in the Jaded Garden appeared to be panicking, but nobody blamed them. In fact, it was a chaotic scene everywhere around the world at this moment. Right as Yuan and the others arrived at the Wang family, they noticed Senior Wang and the Wang siblings leaving the gates. Senior Wang. Yuan called out to her. Taoist Yuan. Perfect timing. Come with me. Senior Wang said to him. How should I respond to her confession? Yuan sat there and silently pondered to himself until sunrise. And just as he prepared to return to the Immortal Caves, another earthquake appeared, and it would last a tad bit longer than the last one, not to mention a little stronger as well. Chapter 585. Another earthquake? Yuan quickly returned to the Immortal Caves. Is the sky red again? Yuan asked them when he returned. No, the sky hasn't changed this time, Meishio said after looking outside. Is that so? Yuan decided to stay at the Immortal Caves with Meishio and the others just in case something were to happen, but sometime in the afternoon Wang Ming showed up at their Immortal Caves. Wang Ming? What happened? Yuan, come with me. We have discovered something new, he said. Really? Let's go. Wang Ming proceeded to bring Yuan and the others to the Wang family, where Senior Wang was waiting for their arrival. What did you find? Yuan asked her. You probably don't know this since we never mentioned it, but we built this place close to our ancestors' tomb, and according to the people who maintain that place, the spiritual energy there has become chaotic and even somewhat menacing. Perhaps there is a clue in that place about the approaching calamity, Senior Wang said. And she continued, I will be heading there now with the other Grand Elders. Do you want to come with us? Of course. Yuan immediately nodded. Great. Follow me. Nope. I don't see anything different either. Everything looks normal to me. They all expressed the same thoughts. Chapter 586. Brother Yuan, how is your body feeling? Is it still heating up? Chu Liuxiang asked him. He nodded and said, Yes, it's still heating up, but it doesn't hurt, so it's nothing to be worried about. If you ask me, I think your body is reacting to something within this tomb. Maybe you actually belong to one of the 6 spiritual families, and your body is telling you so. Chu Liuxiang chuckled as she joked. I belong to one of the 6 spiritual families? Yuan raised his eyebrows. As ridiculous as that sounded, it wasn't completely impossible. As an orphan, his real background could be anything, and that includes one of the 6 spiritual families. However, they won't really know for certain until there is solid proof. Anyways, jokes aside, look at these weapons. Many of them are treasures. Chu Liuxiang said as she approached the weapon display cases. They give off the same aura as spirit-grade weapons in. Yuan mumbled. While Yuan and the others looked at the weapons, the Grand Elders scattered around the tomb to make sure there wasn't anything out of the ordinary. About half an hour later, they all gathered again. Anything? No. Nothing. Yuan then asked, Is this the only room in the tomb? Chapter 587. It's a demon. Impossible. Why is there a demon in this place? Yuan was shocked to the core when he saw the demon statue. Although he has only seen a couple of them, their unique features were more than enough for Yuan to immediately recognize them at glance. Wait. Calm down. I am overthinking things. There is no way demons really exist in this world, right? That is only a stone statue, nothing more. Yuan began trying to convince himself that the stone statue was merely just that and not a real demon that had been sealed, even though it looked ridiculously realistic. However, that didn't explain why his body was burning when looking at the demon statue, as his body was clearly reacting to it. Brother Yuan, what do you see? Chu Liuxiang asked him when he remained silent for too long. Sorry, but I think I overreacted to that statue over there. Yuan pointed at the demon statue that was surrounded by the 6 golden coffins. The stone statue? Everybody there turned to look at the statue. Since it was sort of dark there, they didn't notice the horns and other features immediately. When they eventually noticed these unique features, their eyes widened with shock. What the? Why is there such a thing in the founder's tomb? Senior Wang then said, Let's look around to see if there are any clues for now. I'm sure the founders placed this demon in this place for a reason. Hell, they might have even left behind the method to deal with the demon. We can figure out the other things later. Chapter 588. Yuan and the other began looking around the room, but there really wasn't much there to look at besides the sealed demon and the 6 golden coffins. After a few minutes of looking around, the Grand Elders gathered. Besides the founder's coffin, there isn't anything else for us to look at, Senior Hong said. But to disturb the founder's peace. If we don't do it, that demon will kill everyone once it breaks out of the seal. I'm sure they'll understand. You got a point. The Grand Elders then bowed to the golden coffins. We deeply apologize for disturbing your peace, founders. After apologizing to their founders, the Grand Elders went to their family's coffin. Each of the coffins had one of the 6 spiritual family surnames engraved into it, so the Grand Elders knew which one belonged to their family. Once they were prepared, they opened the coffin to take a look inside. However, to their surprise, all of the coffins were empty. There was nothing, not even signs of a body having ever existed inside these coffins, almost like it was empty since the beginning. Why are these coffins here if they're empty? Senior Wang muttered out loud everyone's question. If our founders are not in here, where are their bodies? Senior Hong asked afterward. Let's look around again to make sure that there aren't any hidden passages. Thus, the Grand Elders began a round of inspection. This is exactly what I want. Flesh and blood, I want a feast. The demon roared as it sped up the narrow staircase, quickly chasing after Yuan and the others. Chapter 589. What was that sound just now? It sounded like an explosion. Fuck. I really hope the demon didn't just break out of its seal. The Grand Elders panicked as they ran upstairs. Meanwhile, Yuan tried his best to learn the demon sealing strike even as they moved, as that was essentially his only chance of winning against a demon at his current strength. Eventually they reached the surface and returned to the main tomb. Seniors, I'm going to borrow some of the weapons in here, Yuan said to them, and without waiting for a response, he retrieved a great sword that resembled the Empyrean Overlord in size from its display case along with a couple of daggers. Weapons? Don't tell me you're planning to fight the demon, Senior Wang asked him. Yuan nodded and said, I can sense a powerful aura quickly approaching us from the staircase. The demon will be here at any minute. If I don't stay here to stop it, everyone will die. That's why I will stay here to stall the demon while you all evacuate the disciples. No. Chu Liuxiang immediately refused. Then she said, if you're going to stay here, I will stay here with you. You must not, young lady. It's my duty to guarantee your safety, Sebastian exclaimed. I don't care. I'm not going to leave Brother Yuan here to die. Humans, be obedient and offer yourself to me and I will make things as painless as possible. If you dare resist, I will make sure you feel it as I slowly tear your flesh from your body with nothing but my teeth. The demon spoke with a hideous grin on its face, revealing its sharp yellow teeth to them. In response to the demon's words, Yuan tightened his grip on the sword, and without waiting for the Grand Elders, he rushed at the demon. Chapter 590. Ha 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 ha. The demon started laughing when it saw Yuan running at it in a seemingly reckless manner. A mere early-stage spirit master dares to challenge me? A demon? Your mother must have never taught you about demons, human. The demon stood there without moving as it continued laughing even though Yuan was already in front of it. Ha! Yuan swung his sword with all of his might, tearing the demon's body in half. Oh, you're a little more powerful than you appear. No wonder why you dared to challenge me. The demon remained calm even after getting split in half. However, that won't be enough to stop me from ripping your flesh and chewing your bones. The demon completely regenerated its body before it even finished its sentence. He wasn't exaggerating about their regeneration abilities. How are we supposed to defeat a monster like that? The Grand Elders lost all will to fight when they witnessed firsthand the demon's heaven-defying regenerating abilities, and they could only stand there in shock as they watched Yuan fight with the demon. Of course, the demon wasn't taking Yuan seriously, as it was still filled with exhilaration from breaking free from the seal, so it wanted to play around with its food before eating them as a way of celebrating its freedom. However, even as he was fighting the demon, Yuan didn't stop trying to comprehend the demon's sealing strike inside his head. The demon eventually got tired of just taking Yuan's attacks and retaliated with its own attack. Bloody claws. The demon used its blood to turn its fingers into a long and sharp weapon before swinging them at Yuan. Flying daggers. Taoist Yuan, you can go ahead of us. Yuan nodded and immediately used his movement technique while pouring all of his spiritual energy into it, reaching a speed that he didn't know was possible before. Chapter 591. After leaving the ancestor's tomb, Senior Wang and the others rushed back to the Jaded Garden to warn all of the disciples about the demon. Of course, the disciples were in disbelief at first, but they eventually snapped out of their daze and started making their way to the evacuation site, where a private airport and dozens of large airplanes had been prepared just in case they ever needed to do a mass evacuation. Leave everything behind. The demon is being stalled by Taoist Yuan and the Grand Elders. Don't let their efforts go to waste. Senior Wang shouted at the disciples that were stumbling around in a panic. Miss Meishio, we have a helicopter. Let's leave here in advance. Sebastian said to her, who was still carrying Chu Liuxiang even though had offered to carry Chu Liuxiang for her. Meishio nodded. Although they will be leaving behind their luggage, they can always return for them in the future when the demon is no longer a threat. Thus, Meishio followed Sebastian to the helicopter. Of course, she made sure to warn the people in the hotel and Jean, who brought them to the Jaded Garden. What? There's a monster? How is that possible? Jean doubted Meixius' words at first, but then the hotel he was staying at received news from the Jaded Garden about the situation. I will be leaving this place with them so you can return by yourself, Meishio said to Jean before following Sebastian to their helicopter and leaving the Jaded Garden. What are we going to do now? Meishio asked Sebastian once they were in the air. Chapter 592. Oh, what a pleasant surprise. Looks like I no longer have to waste time looking for you. I will make you pay for that embarrassment before. The demon licked its hand that was covered in Azure's blood when it noticed Yuan standing a few meters away from it. Him? This blood is fucking delicious. The demon was surprised when it tasted Azure's blood. She will make for a good dessert after I finish eating you, human? The demon laughed loudly. However, there was no response from Yuan, who silently stood there in a daze, almost like head turned into a stone statue. Two streams of tears began flowing down his face a moment later when he realized the situation. Azure. Yuan eventually snapped out of his shock, and when he did, he gritted his teeth so hard that his mouth began bleeding. Aewa. Yuan released a beastly roar that shook the trees around them before rushing at the demon without any movement techniques. He was simply rushing at the demon in a reckless manner. In fact, he wasn't even thinking at all, as his mind was filled with anger and desperation. The demon slashed its claw-like hands at Yuan, and because of its recent feast, its power had grown much more than previously, sending Yuan flying many meters into the distance. Cough. Yuan coughed out a mouthful of blood afterward, but he immediately stood up before rushing at the demon once again. The demon quickly noticed Yuan's sudden change in behavior, and it turned to look at Azure's body on the ground. Did you know her? Perhaps she was your lover? What a pity. If I had known that earlier, I would have kept her alive so that I could torture her before you. The demon sighed in a regretful manner. Chapter 593. A snack on demon course? Impossible. You can't be. The demon quickly realized Yuan's identity, but it didn't dare to actually believe it. After all, there is only one person in this universe who can consume demon cores, and that individual is the founder of the demon sealing clan, Divine Paragon. The Divine Paragon is the bane of all demons. No matter how powerful a demon is, they will remain as mere ants before the Divine Paragon, who can kill demons as simple as breathing. Why you cannot be the Divine Paragon? What are you doing here? Why do you look like that? Why are you showing your true identity now? The demon questioned him. Whether I am real or not. Why don't we put that to the test? Yuan spoke in a calm voice as he slowly approached the demon. Furthermore, Yuan had activated the golden aura once again, but it was much clearer than previously, and he had complete control over it. The demon took a step back every time Yuan took a step forward, but it didn't dare to turn around and run, as it was afraid that if it turned its back to Yuan, it would die without realizing what had happened. However, after walking a dozen steps, the demon suddenly felt something against its back, preventing it from walking back any further. The demon subconsciously turned around to see what was blocking it, as it was certain that there wasn't anything in that direction, and sure enough, when it looked, there was plenty of empty space behind it. However, for some reason, it was unable to move any further, almost like there was an invisible wall there. Where do you think you're going? Yuan suddenly spoke to it. The demon immediately turned to look at Yuan, who had a malicious grin on his face. And he continued, I will crush you 10 times for every human you killed. If you don't tell me, I will torture you until I feel like stopping. The demon stared at Yuan with a terrified gaze. You, monster! It muttered in a powerless voice. Chapter 594. Hurry up and tell me how many humans you killed today. I'm not a very patient person. Yuan spoke before crushing the demon into meat paste again. Once it regenerated, the demon muttered in a trembling voice, I don't remember. You don't remember? Maybe this will jog your memories. Blat. The demon slammed into the ground, instantly turning into a pool of blood. Do you remember now? Yuan asked it again after it regenerated. However, before it could even speak, Yuan interrupted it by flattening it again. Aha. Blat. Aewa. Blat. After flattening the demon a dozen times, Yuan finally stopped flattening it to let it speak. Do you remember now? I remember. I remember. Please. I remember everything. The demon quickly responded this time, as it feared that Yuan would flatten it again before it could even speak. Speak. I killed. When the demon heard Yuan's words and realized that it wasn't dreaming, it literally lost its mind from shock and terror, and it also finally understood why even the strongest demons would run away in fear when they hear the name Divine Paragon. Chapter 595. Once a demon opposes me whether they die or live, is no longer within their control. Yuan stood before the demon with an overbearing atmosphere around him, looking like an overlord. The demon, which had lost its sanity, suddenly released a long and beastly roar. Its glowing red eyes turned dark red, and vigorous veins began popping all over its body. The demon also grew in size, becoming about 30% larger. Yuan smiled when he saw this, and he muttered in a low voice, "Looks like it's about time I stop playing with my food." Dai. The demon swung its claw-like hands at Yuan with all of its power. Seeing this, Yuan casually blocked the attack with his bare arms, completely stopping the demon in its tracks despite being an entire realm weaker than it. After blocking the attack, Yuan suddenly extended his free arm, aiming it at the red crystal in the demon's chest. Yuan's hand pierced the demon's body like how it pierced Azure, before pulling out the red crystal from its chest. Normally, even if the red crystal is removed from a demon's chest, it would simply turn into blood and return to the demon, but in this case the red crystal didn't turn into blood and remained as a crystal inside Yuan's grasp. "Disappear from my sight, you lowly demon." Yuan then tightened his fist, crushing the red crystal into countless tiny fragments. The demon suddenly stopped all movements. Chapter 596. After arriving in Yang City, Meishio and Sebastian rented out a hotel to stay in for the time being, as Chu Liuxiang was still unconscious. "Brother Yuan." Chu Liuxiang woke up shouting about half an hour after they arrived at the hotel. Where are we? Where's Brother Yuan?" Chu Liuxiang asked Meishio, who was in the same room. "We are currently in Yang City," she replied. "What about Brother Yuan?" "He's still in the Jaded Garden." "Why? Why did you leave him behind? I thought you loved him." Chu Liuxiang cried out loud. "Calm down, young lady," Sebastian suddenly said. "It was the young master's decision. If you truly love him, you would respect his wishes." That's. Chu Liuxiang was immediately left speechless by Sebastian's words. Clearly he was used to dealing with her. "Believe in the young master. He's destined to achieve great things in the future, so he won't die there," Sebastian continued. "I guess you're right. But what are we going to do now? I cannot just sit around and do nothing. Call my father. We're going to request his help to deal with the demon." Chu Liuxiang then said, "I have already notified the masters of the situation. They are currently pondering on how they should approach this problem as we speak. We can only wait for their response now. This situation is much direr than you probably think, young lady. If the demon is allowed to run rampant, it could very well be the end of humanity." Chapter 597. Brother Yuan. Where's Brother Yuan? Chu Liuxiang rushed to the hospital after returning to the Jaded Garden with Meishio and Sebastian. Taoist Yuan is currently resting in the patient room. Senior Wang said to them. "What about his condition?" Meishio then asked. "Don't worry, he's no longer in a critical condition." "Thank you." Meishio released a deep and relieved sigh. "We don't deserve your gratitude as we didn't really do anything." There was a massive hole in the center of Taoist Yuan's chest, but it closed up on its own before we could treat it. However, he's still in a coma and we don't know when he'll wake up. Senior Wang then led them to the room that Yuan was resting in. Inside the room, the other grand elders as well as some of the elite disciples such as Wang Ming and Li Jinxi were there. "Brother Yuan." Chu Liuxiang ran to the bed where Yuan was resting. "Are you okay, Yuan? Can you speak?" Meishio asked him. Chapter 598. I am fine. Where am I? And how long have I been asleep? Yuan asked in a low voice. "We are currently inside the Six Spiritual Families private hospital, and you have been asleep for about 2 weeks now," Meishio said. "That long?" Yuan slowly sat up on the bed. "I'm sorry if I made you too worried, but I am fine," he said to them a moment later. "Wait right here. I will get the doctors to check your condition." Meishio then went to call for a doctor. After checking Yuan's body, the doctor said, "His body is a little weak right now, but besides that, everything is normal." "Thank you, doctor." "I need to speak with the grand elders," Yuan said to Meishio. "The calamity? It's not over yet." What? Meixius' eyes widened with shock. "What do you mean the calamity isn't over yet? Didn't you defeat the demon already?" Chu Liuxiang quickly asked. "Yes, the demon is gone. However, that isn't the only demon in this world. There are other sealed demons in this world and they will eventually break from their seal. Unbelievable. So we'll have to deal with this again? Meishu muttered in a voice of disbelief. Sometime later, the Grand Elders gathered at the hospital inside Yuan's room. Chapter 599. Brother Yuan, you can be pretty cruel at times, you know? Chu Liuxiang suddenly said to him after they lifted into the air in their private plane. Why would you say that? Yuan asked in a dumbfounded voice. You already forgot about hitting me with a sword and knocking me unconscious? Chu Liuxiang puffed her cheeks in an angry yet cute manner. Oh, I'm sorry, but if I didn't do that, you could have gotten hurt for real. Yuan apologized. I understand why you did it and I am thankful that you did, but I cannot help but be upset about it. Therefore, as punishment, you'll have to hug me while we sleep tonight. Chu Liuxiang then said. Yuan didn't say anything and merely nodded with a slight smile on his face. And for the rest of the flight, Yuan would remain relatively silent, seemingly in deep thoughts the whole time. Neither Meishu nor Chu Liuxiang tried to speak with him when they saw his mood, as they can tell that he was still in pain from what happened at the Jaded Garden, and sometimes, it was the better choice to let them ponder in peace than to try and comfort them. After the whole incident in the Jaded Garden, Yuan's view of this world has flipped upside down, and coupled with the new revelation that exists somewhere in this universe, Yuan wasn't sure how he should do next. This must be your room, Brother Yuan. It smells like you. Chu Liuxiang said with a smile on her face after taking a deep breath. She then laid on the bed and continued, This will also be my room starting today. Chapter 600. All right, Yuan, you should call Yuro. Although ID already explained the situation to her, you should still speak with her. Meishu said to him after unpacking their luggage. Okay. Meishu then handed her phone to him. Hello? Yuro? It's me, Yuan. Brother. Are you okay? Yes, I am fine. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there for you. I would actually prefer it if you weren't here. I don't want you to be in such a dangerous situation. Yuan said. After talking for a few minutes, Yuro asked, What are you going to do now that you're back home? I'm going to create my own faction and focus on. You're going to create your own faction? When? As soon as we can, I guess. Why did you wait so long to make your faction, brother? If you told me earlier, I would have joined you. I am too invested in my faction to leave now. Sorry? Yuan had nothing else to say. Well, make sure you visit me soon. The Cultivators Association? I didn't think we would go back there so soon. Yuan sighed. Chapter 601. Yuan, I have been wondering this ever since I learned that you were blind. But how do you see where you're going? You can move and even fight better than most people who can see. I almost didn't believe it when I first heard it. Wang Ming said to him as they walked down the street as one big group. Although I am blind, I'm not actually blind. I can see using divine sense. Yuan said, and he began explaining to them about divine sense. The Grand Elders are spirit masters as well, but they cannot use divine sense. Wang Bingbing shook her head. By the way, what's the faction going to be called? Shilang then asked. Demon Sealing Faction, Yuan calmly responded. Demon Sealing? They all looked at him with wide eyes. Does this mean? Yes, our purpose is to deal with the demons that will eventually break out of their seal. Of course, I don't actually expect any of you to fight the demons. I can handle them alone, but if you wish to learn how to seal demons, I can teach you. Really? You'll teach us how to defeat demons? Wang Ming exclaimed in an excited voice. After what happened at the Jaded Garden, he wished that he had the ability to fight demons. If that's what you want. Yuan nodded. Sometime later, they arrived at the Cultivators Association that was as busy as ever with cultivators mostly at the Spirit Apprentice level walking around. Yuan took a deep breath, clearing the bad memories he had in this place, before walking inside with the others. Once all of their names were in the system, Chairman Li created their faction. Normally, a newly registered faction would need to be vetted first before they are approved, but with Chairman Li's position within the Cultivators Association, they easily skipped all of those steps and instantly got approved as an official faction. Congratulations, your faction Demon Sealing Faction has been created. If you ever need anything or have any questions, you are free to contact me at any time and I will do my best to help you. Chairman Li said to them afterward. Chapter 602. Does this mean we are done here? Yuan asked after their faction was created. Not completely. Your faction has been created, but we still need some more information, such as the location of your faction headquarters, and if you want, you can register your members' cultivation base into the system so that we can rank your faction. Chairman Li said. And he continued, of course, the higher rank your faction, the more benefit you can receive. The location of our faction? Yuan mumbled. What if we don't have a location yet? He then asked. That's completely fine. It's not required to have a headquarter for your faction, but most factions have one as it makes them look more professional. Also, it would make things more convenient for the members if they can all live in the same area. Yuan turned around and asked the others, well, what do you guys think? We don't have any living quarters at the moment since we weren't sure if you wanted us to stay afterward, but we can live in hotels or rent out someplace near your apartment if it's too much to get our own headquarters since they're not cheap. Wang Ming said. If it's a money issue, we can simply ask our families for help. Li Jinxi said calmly. I think it's more of a location issue since I don't have any ideas where we should make our headquarters, Yuan said. If you need help looking for a headquarter, our Cultivators Association can help you. We have specialists for this kind of stuff. We will help you scout out areas based on your preferences, and we can give out loans with zero interest if you need help with money. Chairman Li suddenly said, realizing that this is a perfect opportunity to make things right between the Cultivators Association and Yuan, whose faction will surely become a top power in the near future. Yuan and the others left the Cultivators Association shortly afterward. Chapter 603. Where will you guys be staying until we have our headquarters? Yuan asked Wang Ming and the others. Well, probably rent a hotel somewhere close to your apartment. I'll only be for around a week anyway. Wang Ming said. What about you? What are you going to be doing in the meantime? Li Jinxi asked him as she was hoping to train with him while they waited. I'm going to return to. It's been a very long time since I last stepped foot in that world after all, he said. The elite disciples raised their eyebrows simultaneously. Although they have played before, none of them took it seriously. Maybe he wants to get his mind of that incident by indulging himself in. All of the elite disciples had a similar thought, so they didn't question him. Sometime later, Yuan and the elite disciples went their separate ways. I didn't think he'd really allow us to stay, Shi Murong said once they left. Why not? He's a very nice guy if you get to know him. Wang Ming said. Really? I feel nervous when he's around. His presence is extraordinary. That doesn't mean he's a bad person. In fact, he can be quite humble at times. Chapter 604. Sect Master. Regarding this year's disciple recruitment. A group of high-ranking sect elders stood before Song Linger as they talked about their future plans for the Heavenly Melody Academy. However, midway through their meeting, Song Linger noticed that one of her communication jade slips was trembling, and it was the one that she'd been anticipating for the longest. Seeing this, Song Linger immediately listened to the message from it. I am currently outside the Heavenly Melody Academy. Yuan's voice resounded. He's finally here. Song Linger stood up and shouted in an excited voice. This startled the sect elders, and they all proceeded to stare at her with puzzled looks. The meeting will end early today. We'll continue this at another date. Song Linger said to them before leaving the scene in a hurry without explaining to them the situation. The sect elders could only speculate that something serious must have happened to cause her to leave with such urgency. Little did they know that she was only going to greet a young man at the entrance of their sect. Once Song Linger left the meeting, she quickly sent Yuan a message stating that she will be there shortly. Meanwhile, outside the Heavenly Melody Academy, the disciples guarding the gate said to Yuan, who had been standing outside their sect for a while now, "Excuse me, but you cannot linger outside the sect, so you'll have to leave. I am waiting for your sect master who should be arriving here now," Yuan said to them in a calm voice. "Since you're here, does it mean you'll be challenging the stairway to heaven soon?" Song Linger asked him as they walked around the sect. "Yes. I wanted to explore the lower heavens a little more before, but alas. Looks like I will have to postpone that plan for the future." Chapter 605. Leaving it for the future? You know it's going to be very difficult for you to return once you ascend, right? Especially the higher you go, the more resources it'll require for you to come back to the lower heavens, Song Linger said to him. "I know, but it's not impossible. Song Linger stared at him in silence for a moment before speaking. Did something happen? There's something different about you. How can you tell? A woman's intuition, I guess, she casually shrugged. Yuan then sighed. Something did happen, but it's all in the past now, and dwelling on it won't do me any good. While it's definitely not worth dwelling on some things, some definitely are worth it, as it could be what pushes you further past your limit. If you want to talk to me about it, I am all ears. Yuan pondered for a moment before asking, Senior Song, do you know anyone close to you that have passed away? Sorry if it's a sensitive question. Song Linger looked at him with raised eyebrows. Death? This is the cultivation world, where death is probably one of if not the most common thing regardless of which realm you're in. I don't think there is anyone around my age that hasn't experienced the death of a friend or a loved one. In fact, I have lost many friends to magical beasts and even more to other cultivators. I thought it was something more serious, but I guess this is your first time experiencing something like this, which is pretty normal. Chapter 606. If he's the god of music, he should have a very high cultivation base, right? I heard that cultivators who can live forever exist in the upper heavens. Yuan said. You mean true immortals? These people can be counted with one hand. And while he was recognized as the god of music, that doesn't automatically make him a powerful cultivator. Perhaps if he was called the god of cultivation, it would make more sense. Song Linger said. The god of music, huh? I wonder what kind of person he was. Yuan mumbled to himself. Unfortunately, not much is known about the god of music besides his name, Tian Kai. Yuan raised his eyebrows after hearing the surname Tian, as it sounded familiar for some reason. Their surnames are also Tian. Yuan thought to himself. After a moment of silence, Yuan asked Song Linger, Do you mind if I play a song here? Right now? Song Linger raised her eyebrows. Yes, I want to pay my respects to both of them the same way the zither goddess paid respect to the god of music. Go ahead. Yuan then retrieved the soul-ensnaring zither before taking a seat right before the two statues. After taking a deep breath, he began playing zither goddess ethereal arts. Ding, for most cultivators, yes, that is the case, but I am content with my current standing. I am the sect master of the Heavenly Melody Academy. If I leave the lower heavens, I will have to start climbing from the bottom again. Furthermore, I don't have anybody who can replace my position as sect master. If I leave now, the Heavenly Melody Academy will suffer. Song Linger explained. Chapter 607. Maybe in the future when I have someone who is capable of replacing me as sect master, I will challenge the Stairway to Heaven again. Anyways, for the Stairway to Heaven, when I challenged it, I had to do 4 trials. For the first trial, I had to fight a stampede of magical beasts that was 2 levels above my cultivation. For the second trial, I had to traverse 1,000 miles while being burdened by a powerful pressure and magical beasts. For the third trial, I had to confront my heart demon. And for the final trial, I had to fight another magical beast, but this time, it was 5 whole levels above my cultivation. Although the trials are random for everyone, many people have received the same trial before, so there's a good chance that you'll experience some of the same trials I went through. I see. This information will definitely be helpful to me. Thank you, Senior Song. If there's anything I can do in return, don't hesitate to ask. Yuan said to her. I do have one request for you. Can you do a performance before the disciples for me? I want to broaden their views. Most of them think I am the #1 zither expert under heaven, but that is far from the truth, as there are plenty more skillful zither experts in the upper heavens. Okay. I don't mind if it's just a performance. When do you want me to do it? I will need some time to prepare for it. Can you give me 3 days? You can even stay here as an esteemed guest if you'd like. A performance? By whom? An expert that's even better than me, she casually responded, leaving them speechless. Chapter 608. Even better than you, sect master? Who is this person? One of the sect elders asked. You'll find out in 3 days, she casually responded. Meanwhile, back at the music pagoda, Yuan decided to see if the music sheets on the second floor were any different. There are more notes. I guess the higher the floor, the more difficult the songs. Now that he had this knowledge, he wanted to see what was the most difficult song in this place, so he began making his way towards the 11th floor. Once he reached the 11th floor, he walked straight to the zither section and began looking through the music sheets one by one. Oh, I recognize this song. Yuan was surprised by the first music sheet that Head randomly picked, and it was the same song that Head played during the zither competition after learning it from Songlinger's disciples. Even though he already knew the song, he still wanted to look at the music sheet properly to get a better understanding of it. While Yuan looked at this music sheet, a disciple approached him from behind. "Hey, you're blocking the shelf," this disciple said to him. "Oh, I'm sorry." Yuan turned around to see a beautiful young lady standing behind him, and she looked very familiar for some reason. Isn't she from the zither competition? It took a moment for Yuan to recognize this girl, who was the one that played the incredible song God Descends from Heaven during the zither competition. However, this girl didn't recognize Yuan, who wasn't wearing a mask at this moment but did during the zither competition. As Yuan made way for her, she noticed the music note in his grasp. "This was all my fault, elders. If you're going to hold anyone responsible, it should be me." AI1 suddenly stepped forward and said, "Prime Disciple AI?" The sect elders looked at her with wide eyes, as AI1 is usually a quiet girl who never causes any trouble. Chapter 609. WO. Since Prime Disciple AI says so, well, forget about this incident. However, make sure it doesn't happen again, or the sect master will be very upset with you. The sect elders said to her. Because AI1 was Songlinger's disciple, the other sect elders didn't dare to punish her, as they believed that they would be overstepping their boundaries as a sect elder to discipline the sect master's disciple. "Thank you, sect elders. This will not happen again." AI1 bowed to them. She then glanced at Yuan for a moment before leaving the music pagoda. Yuan also decided to leave since it would be impossible to look at the music sheets in peace after that little commotion. Once he left the music pagoda, Yuan noticed AI1 standing outside, almost like she was waiting for him. "I'm sorry for acting up just now," she suddenly said to him. "I get agitated when people lie and make bold claims before me. You should know that God Descends from Heaven isn't something ordinary people can play, and when someone claims they can play such a song to the end, it's only natural to doubt their claims. If I had known that you were the same person from that competition." "I'm sorry." AI1 apologized to him again. Yuan could tell that she was sincere in her apology, so he didn't hold any hard feelings for her. "Don't worry about it. It was just a misunderstanding," he said to her. "Thank you." After a moment of silence, she asked him, "By the way, what are you doing at our sect? Do you intend on becoming a disciple?" Chapter 610. I'm sorry about that. That was Disciple Yu, a new disciple that had been recruited by Master shortly after the zither competition, so she's a little arrogant. And for some reason she's obsessed with surpassing me. AI1 said to Yuan afterward. You can also ignore what she said. What's this Lily Pavilion? Yuan asked. It's a place where disciples go to battle each other with their instruments. The loser must jump into the cold water that surrounds the place. It's a very popular area for disciples who want to settle disputes. That does sound like a pretty fun place. Yuan smiled. At least they don't have to injure each other, which is the biggest reason why people go there instead of the traditional challenge, where disciples fight each other with weapons. Anyways, let's continue to the Zither Goddess Immortal Cave. About half an hour later, they arrive at this secluded area where many immortal caves existed, and it sort of reminded Yuan of the immortal caves at the Jaded Garden but at a much larger scale. Which one belongs to the Zither Goddess? Yuan asked as he looked around. Do you see that one with a closed entrance in the middle? That's the one. AI1 pointed at the immortal cave that had a couple of people standing outside of it. What are they doing? Yuan asked when he saw the scene. They are all trying to open up the immortal cave without breaking the place, she said. You see people like that almost every day. A few minutes later, they climbed the hill and approached the Zither Goddess Immortal Cave. Damn it. This place really doesn't want to open up. If it was so easy to open, it would have opened tens of thousands of years ago. It's true, Master. There are other disciples that witnessed it. Let's go. We're going to the immortal caves. Songlinger said as she stood up. AI1 then followed Songlinger back to the immortal caves. AI1 hoped that Yuan would have returned by then, but alas, he was still nowhere to be seen. Chapter 611. After arriving at the immortal caves, Song Linger asked the disciples there for their story. That person touched the immortal cave and disappeared the next second. It was so sudden. He hasn't returned since then. Song Linger frowned at the situation, and she began looking around the Zither goddess immortal cave, even touching the exact same spot that Yuan had touched, but nothing happened. Oh, I forgot to mention this, but he played a song with the soul-ensnaring zither before touching the immortal cave. AI1 suddenly said. Why didn't you tell me this first? Song Linger sighed. Do you know what kind of song he played? No, I have never heard of such a song before. Can you replicate it? Song Linger then asked. AI1 didn't immediately respond. She closed her eyes and recalled Yuan's performance and tried to play his song inside her mind, but alas, she was unable to remember the song for some reason. Almost like there was an otherworldly power preventing her from doing so. I cannot remember the song. AI1 sighed after trying. What? You should be able to memorize a song after hearing it once. Was the song he played really that difficult? Song Linger looked at AI1 with a surprised face. Not difficult. It was complex, almost like it was a technique as well as a song. That's the best I can describe it. AI1 said. If it were not for his superior strength that allowed him to move in the water without knowing how to swim, he would have never gotten out of the pond and would have drowned to death sooner or later. After getting out of the water, Yuan turned to face the 6 beautiful women that were still bathing inside the water, and all of them had a baffled look on their faces, looking like they were witnessing something that shouldn't be possible. Chapter 6:12. Hello. Sorry for interrupting you all, but can you tell me where we are right now? Yuan asked them in a somewhat dazed voice, as these women were truly breathtakingly beautiful. However, these beautiful fairies remained silent as they continued to glare at him. At first they were dazed, then they slowly began to realize their situation. Once they fully comprehended the situation, their dazed faces turned into frowns, and their gaze turned bloodthirsty. Yuan swallowed nervously when he saw their unfriendly, even threatening gaze. Unfortunately, before he could speak, one of them shouted, "It's a man. A man has defiled our paradise. Get him." Hearing their words, Yuan subconsciously turned around and began running for some reason. Although he regretted this decision at first, he would quickly realize that it was actually the right choice. He's running. Chase after him. The 6 beauties immediately jumped out of the water, revealing their completely naked bodies, but Yuan was too occupied with running to care. Once they were out of the water, these beauties quickly retrieved their robes to cover their bodies, but they didn't even bother dressing up properly before chasing after Yuan, looking like a group of ladies who just woke up late for work and are currently scrambling to get prepared. Heavens, they are fast. Yuan cried inwardly when he saw them quickly closing in on him even though he started running many seconds ahead of them. And why can't I use chi manipulation in this place? However, that didn't last long as the cold woman increased the pressure a second later, instantly knocking Yuan unconscious. Chapter 6:13. After knocking Yuan unconscious, the cold woman turned to look at the other 6 beauties and said, 6 spirit kings cannot handle a mere spirit grandmaster. A little boy? You should all be ashamed of yourselves. The 6 beauties lowered their heads in a shameful manner, their faces flushed with redness. We're sorry for being useless, Elder Shui. Quickly return to the sect and tell me everything that occurred just now. The cold woman called Elder Shui used her spiritual energy to pick up Yuan before flying away, disappearing into the distance in just a few moments. The 6 beauties quickly followed Elder Shui's words and returned to the sect that was 100 miles away from their location. When Elder Shui returned to the sect first, she handed the still unconscious Yuan to one of the disciples there and said to her, "Lock him up and interrogate him for his identity when he wakes up." Yes, Elder Shui. After Yuan was carried away, Elder Shui returned to her living quarters to wait for the 6 beauties to return. Once they finally arrived, she said to them, "Tell me everything." The 6 beauties that were standing beside each other began explaining the situation to Elder Shui. We went to the bamboo pond to wash ourselves, but shortly after we entered the water, we heard someone screaming and it sounded like a man's voice. Once we realized where the sound was coming from, we all looked up, and to our surprise, a person was falling from the sky. After a long moment of silence, Elder Shui turned to look at Yuan with a complicated expression on her face. "I will be back later. Don't touch him or this spatial ring until I return," Elder Shui said to the disciple before disappearing from the place without even touching the spatial ring once, leaving her speechless. Chapter 6:14. What happened? Yuan wondered to himself as he watched Elder Shui leave the scene in a hurry. The disciple was also dumbfounded by the turn of events, and she turned to look at Yuan with a profound expression on her face. Just who is this guy? She wondered to herself. Meanwhile, after leaving the prison area, Elder Shui went to summon other sect elders. About half an hour later, Elder Shui sat in a medium-sized room with a dozen other figures, all females. What happened, Sister Shui? One of them asked after everyone was seated. We have a problem, she responded with a deep frown on her face. The atmosphere there immediately became serious when the others saw Elder Shui's expression, as she's rarely this solemn. First of all, a man had entered the fairy paradise, she continued after a moment of silence. What? A man? How dare this savage beast invade our sacred territory? Doesn't he know that men are not allowed in the fairy paradise, and breaking this rule is punishable with the death sentence? There are always people who want to try their luck. This is the third man to invade our territory in the last 10 years. It's only a man, right? Why are you so serious about it, Sister Shui? Just kill him and toss his body back where it belongs like we always do. Another one said. Elder Shui shook her head and said, that's the problem. This person isn't just an ordinary man. He has a dragon spatial ring with him. Wait? What? A dragon spatial ring? Chapter 6:15. A bottle that seems to contain some sort of blood essence, life-saving treasures, a demon core, and even the 7-colored herb. This man is loaded with treasures. The disciple cried inwardly when she saw the treasures on the floor, feeling a strong urge to take them for herself. Of course, with Elder Shui standing right beside her, she didn't dare to actually act upon her desires. As for Elder Shui, she couldn't care less about the treasures, and the only thing in her sights right now was the golden dragon robe. He not only has a dragon spatial ring, but he also has a golden dragon robe. I will be damned if he's not part of the royal dragon family. Elder Shui sighed inwardly. After seeing the golden dragon robe, Elder Shui was almost convinced that Yuan belonged to the royal dragon family. The only thing that didn't make sense was Yuan's behavior, as he was being oddly quiet and obedient even in such a situation. If he was actually from the royal dragon family, he would have long revealed his identity so that they couldn't just kill him. Maybe he has a reason that forbids him from revealing his identity? Elder Shui wondered to herself. You can put your stuff back inside the storage ring. Elder Shui said to him a moment later. Bring her inside. I want to speak with her personally. The Dragon King commanded. Yes. Please excuse this subject. The guard bowed to the Dragon King before returning to Elder Zhou and the others. The Dragon King wishes to speak with you. Please follow me. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.